Hey, I'm Robin, one of the tech experts here to help you at Curry's PC World. I'm not just a voice on the radio. You can now come into your local store and talk tech with a human being like me. Yay! Just the news you needed this morning. We've put all the right measures in place to help you again safely in your local Staples Corner store. The tech experts are back in town. So come in and see if that laptop can help you improve your home setup. And welcome back to your local Curry's PC World.
Next week, and Prince Andrew is under pressure with the arrest of Ghislaine Maxwell, associate of Jeffrey Epstein. I'm Leanne Gerrans with World News.
And German lawmakers end a legal standoff by backing the ECB's bond buys.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, on DAB Digital Radio London, Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington DC, Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM Channel 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
A very good morning from London. I'm Roger Hearing.
And I'm Caroline Hepker. Well, welcome to the programme as we start the day in terms of European trading this morning. US Stock 600 actually up by 0.25% already out of the gate. Thursday also saw European equity markets gain. Roger, I think the mood in Europe really is around the idea of continuing support for workers. There is a fear of a surge in job losses. Certainly the case here in the UK as we look to Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, who speaks next week. But it's also the case in other parts of Europe, in Spain, in Germany. Remember, we've got 50 million jobs being protected by furlough programmes across the EU.
Yeah, but as we heard earlier in the programme, Caroline, certainly in terms of the UK, not all jobs can be protected forever. And we heard from the hospitality industry suggestions that as many as a third of outlets might close permanently. We're going to see a lot more job issues piling up here in the UK. But, of course, it is Super Saturday tomorrow when people will be hoping, at least in that industry, there is a spur to what's going on with them and their bottom line, although there are also concerns that it might all get somewhat out of hand.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can go and have a drink in a pub, go to a restaurant. Let's see how it goes tomorrow. Certainly the Prime Minister telling punters to be cautious. As for the rest of the markets, I'll give you a quick look at what's going on. So the FTSE 100 is up by 0.3% at the moment. The CAC current also gains 0.25% this morning after we had a positive trading session in Asia. Another data beat in terms of the Caixin China PMI services number out of China. Also the US jobs report, rehiring increase in June in the US, so that really helped to lift US equities yesterday. Having said that, of course, it is Independence Day tomorrow, so it's a holiday today in the US. American cash, equity and bond markets are shut. As for the European bond markets this morning, bit of a shrug from that vote in the German Parliament just late yesterday, which basically gave the green light to the ECB PSPP scheme, so the bond buying scheme. There was a tangle between the German court and the ECB. Well, that was all laid to rest by the Parliament yesterday, but actually bond markets haven't really reacted, certainly at the moment. Negative 42 basis points for German yields, French yields at negative 11 basis points, Italian BTPs at 1.2% this morning, so down by a basis point there. And just lastly, in terms of other markets for you, the dollar has been weaker all morning and continues that way, but just 0.1% lower. Oil also lower, along with gold prices, which actually rise a little bit, $1,776 the troy ounce. So there's the markets.
Right, let's have a look at what the stocks are to watch this morning. Bloomberg's Kit Rees joins us down the line from London. So, Kit, good morning to you. Now, European banks, the German Parliament, of course, backed the ECB's bond buying programme. So what's been the reaction from European banks?
So if we look at the banking index this morning, we've got German and Italian lenders dominating the top performing stocks. So we've got UBI up 2.7%, Intesa up 0.9%, Commerzbank up 0.5%. So this ruling, it ended the legal standoff when Germany's top court ruled in May that the bond buying program, which began in 2015, could be illegal. But the program is seen as a key prop for the economy. So we're seeing, some of the euro area lenders rallying today.
Another interesting area is, of course, food delivery, bringing meals to your home. Delivery Hero are saying their second quarter order numbers rose 94% against a year ago. So I guess, well, that's a huge boost for them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the online food delivery companies are seen, as beneficiaries from the lockdown measures we've had across Europe. Restaurants have been closed, people staying in, so it looks like more people have been ordering food online. So Delivery Hero said order numbers rose 94% in the second quarter compared with the same period last year, and the June order numbers increased 104%. So it's been a pretty good time for them, and the shares are up 3.6%. So very positive reaction there from the market.
And not such good news for Rio Tinto, because their flagship copper project could be costing a lot more.
No, and if we look at the shares on the mining index, Rio Tinto is the biggest underperformer. It's down 0.5%. It said that the copper project, which is located in Mongolia, could cost as much as $1.8 billion more, and it could also face delays. And this is due to some stability risks which were identified below the surface last year. So, yeah, the shares not reacting positively there at all.
Yeah, 18 months ago I was down in that mine, right at the bottom. Extraordinary project. Yes, no, just reflecting. Strange place to be, but fascinating, but obviously rather pricier than Rio Tinto had hoped. Kit, thanks so much. Bloomberg's Kit Rees there with Stocks to Watch this morning.
Roger, you get to the most interesting places in the world.
Good morning and welcome to SG Trader, the live trading channel where you can follow us for free, copy our trades and make some profit. If you're looking for our trading strategy, please go to our website companyeye.co.uk and get it from there, or you can check our channel description for the link provided. We trade our own funds in front of you and our customers so they can see how their investment growing. We don't use demo account. So follow our trades, see how we trade and mentor yourself through live trading sessions. Okay, let's see where we left you from yesterday. We still hold Japanese yen, as you can see from our ticker. And we sold overnight euro. As I mentioned, we placed a stop on euro USD for 1.1236, so we sold it already and we earned £200. Let's see what today brings us and how much profit we will make today. Please don't forget that today is almost a lot of people on holiday or bank holiday as 4th of July.
Now, German lawmakers have ended a legal standoff over the European Central Bank's bond buying. A broad group of MPs voted to back the programme, seen as key to propping up the euro area economy. The dispute was sparked by Germany's top court that ruled the purchases could be illegal. But this vote means the Bundesbank can stay in the programme.
And when it comes to the latest on US-China tensions, the US Congress has passed a law pushing sanctions on Chinese officials and their banks involved in cracking down on dissent in Hong Kong. The city's government has said that even the slogan "Liberate Hong Kong" violates the new security law. The US bill now just needs President Trump's signature.
And speaking to Bloomberg, White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow said the US is upset over Chinese hacking, but Beijing is still implementing the Phase 1 trade pact, quotes, at the moment.
China is a huge problem. We are engaging with them on trade. But what they are doing in Hong Kong, as well as other problems, becomes a larger and larger difficulty in our relations, as Secretary Pompeo and National Security Advisor O'Brien have said time and time again.
That was top US economic advisor Larry Kudlow speaking to Bloomberg.
And when it comes to the data, China's services activity jumped in June. That's according to the private Caixin gauge, which reached the highest level since April 2010. It adds to the signs of increased momentum in the world's second largest economy. The Caixin survey focuses on smaller companies, paints really an even brighter picture for the economy there than the official readout. And Roger, perhaps largely on the back of that, China's CSI 300 index jumped at the close 1.9%. So actually, that's a 5-year high for the CSI 300.
Wow. Right, let's get the latest now with Leanne Gerrans on Global News. Leanne, good morning to you. Now, you're starting with Brexit.
Yes, good morning, Roger. So Brexit negotiators appear to be homing in on a broad agreement. That's despite talks this week ending a day earlier than planned. Officials told us the two teams are beginning to near a so-called landing zone that could form the basis of a deal. The two sides will regroup in London next week, but both acknowledge major sticking points do remain. The former girlfriend of convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein has been arrested on sex charges. Ghislaine Maxwell is accused of assisting Epstein to abuse minors by helping to recruit and groom victims known to be underage. Maxwell has previously denied all involvement, and a lawyer hired to represent her has declined to comment on the charges. Another lawyer, Lisa Bloom, represents one of the women who's made accusations against the pair.
Any mention of Ghislaine Maxwell's name is very triggering and traumatic for her. She would rather never hear that name again. On the other hand, of course, she's pleased that Ghislaine was actually arrested. She really did not expect to be hearing that.
Meanwhile, following Maxwell's arrest, there's growing pressure on Prince Andrew to speak to FBI investigators. The Duke of York was friends with her and Jeffrey Epstein. At a press conference in New York, prosecutors urged Andrew to come forward. States across the U.S. are tightening rules as virus cases continue to accelerate there. Texas is making face masks compulsory. It's a reversal for Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who had long opposed the move. Meanwhile, U.S. infectious disease expert Anthony Fauci is warning the virus may be mutating, and that is making it easier for the pathogen to spread. And Mexico has reported a record daily rise in confirmed COVID-19 cases. This comes a day after the country overtook Spain with the sixth deadliest outbreak in the world. Bloomberg's Jose Orozco says despite this rise in infections, lockdown is easing.
Deaths from the virus reached 28,510. The country is likely to overtake France sometime this week. Even as deaths surge, Mexico City businesses began reopening this week based on government data showing a drop in hospital occupancy. In Mexico City, Jose Orozco, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg. Roger.
Thanks very much indeed, Leanne. Now with the morning sport, here's Lewis Mason with news of a humiliation for the new Premier League champions.
Liverpool's first game as Premier League champions ended in a 4-0 thrashing at the hands of former title holders Manchester City last night. Jurgen Klopp's side received a guard of honour on their return to action, but City promptly halted their party. Even in defeat, Klopp tells Sky Sports News he was happy with his players.
It's not nice, it's not the goal we wanted, but I wanted to see that we have really the right attitude, and I saw that, and with that I'm fine, and the result we have to take.
Tottenham boss Jose Mourinho says he'd be risking a suspension if he revealed his true thoughts on VAR. His side had a goal ruled out by the video assistant referee during their 3-1 Premier League defeat to Sheffield United last night. And the long-awaited Formula One season finally gets underway today. Practice takes place ahead of Sunday's Austrian Grand Prix.
So that was the sports news. Now, still ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, the spread of the coronavirus accelerates in America. US cases jumping the most in almost 8 weeks. And Anthony Fauci says that a new mutation could speed its spread. So we're going to bring you more on the pandemic. Roger, I note that Sky News has a new poll out here in the UK saying that actually more than 8 out of 10 Britons would back another lockdown if there were a second spike in the UK.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fear out there, and there is some sense that perhaps not as many people as we think might turn up in the pubs tomorrow. Let's see. This is Bloomberg.
Debbie Hart is president of BioNJ, which represents the interests of more than 400 New Jersey-based biotech companies. She's also a strong voice in the biotech sector, supporting research universities like New Jersey Institute of Technology. She sees NJIT as a valuable partner in attracting venture capital and biotech startups to the Garden State.
So the number one reason that companies come here to New Jersey for the biotech industry is for our talent. We estimate that there were about 30 biotech companies in the early 90s in New Jersey, about 80 in 1998. Today there are more than 400. And that growth continues, and it's come from every possible angle. Other countries, other states, they've spun out of our academic institutions as well as our biotech and our pharma companies, and we expect that growth to continue long into the future. And NJIT is a pipeline for talent, for companies, for entrepreneurs to do that important work.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
When the market is unpredictable, BAM gives you certainty. In the face of volatility and illiquidity, BAM-insured municipal bonds deliver default protection, value preservation, and a durable AA rating from S&P. BAM's insurance protects against everything that causes a default, including natural disasters, financial fraud, pension issues, and economic disruption, like the one we're experiencing right now. BAM. Build America Mutual. Ask your broker about BAM-insured municipal bonds.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Guy Johnson.
Despite the tough environment, the French automaker Citroën is launching a new electric crossover. Vincent Kobe, the Citroën CEO, joining us now. Vincent Kobe, thank you very much indeed for your time. Some might argue this is a tough time to launch a new car. What are your expectations for this new vehicle? How do you think it is going to sell in the coronavirus environment?
Yeah, first, thanks very much for having me. And as you all know, the industry has been shaken by the recent crisis, but we still believe it's a proper time to launch a car like the new C4. The market has evolved a lot. We're talking purchase pattern, we're talking powertrain, but I think the demand, and we saw that in the last weeks, at least in continental Europe, has been extremely strong coming out of the crisis. Obviously, the type of transportation, the distance of travel will evolve, the economic powers will be, at play, but we still believe that there's a lot of demand for individual mobility, for, the protective cocoon a car is, and obviously we're launching this new C4 with a fully electric alternative, which we believe will address the growing, concern or interest for sustainability.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and at Bloomberg QuickTake. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Good morning, I'm Sandra Kilhoff with this Bloomberg Business Flash. And we are seeing a bit of a mixed trading day here in Europe with the FTSE flat, the DAX higher by just 1/10. Similarly so for the Stock 600, while the CAC 40 is weaker by 1/10. US futures just eking out a gain following a risk-on day in Asian trading after positive jobs numbers in the US and a strong services reading out of China this morning on the PMI data there. Now, do bear in mind, volumes are quite low today. It will be thin trading because the US is closed for its 4th of July holiday. Now, the dollar is a bit weaker this morning, down 0.1%. Now, we are seeing otherwise the yen holding at 107.5, sterling gaining to 124, the euro at 112 this morning. No cash treasury trade this morning, but we are seeing 10-year bund yields a bit weaker at -44, 10-year gilt yields at 18 basis points this morning. Benchmark JGB yields a bit weaker as well at 3 basis points today. Finally, in the commodity markets, gold is headed for the 4th week of gains, currently at $1,776 a troy ounce. Copper very much bid as well, set to erase its losses this year as copper holdings continue to slip. Finally, oil a bit weaker after reaching its highest level in almost 4 months. WTI down 0.9% at $40 a barrel. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Jen Garens with more on what's going on around the world.
Sandra, thank you. The spread of the coronavirus is accelerating in America, with US cases jumping the most in almost 8 weeks. The Centers for Disease Control said fatalities there could reach 160,000 by late July. Also, Brazil has recorded its second highest daily number of deaths. Meanwhile, Thailand has said it will allow wealthy tourists with private planes to visit as it begins to reopen its vital tourism sector. In France, President Emmanuel Macron says he will continue to push through reforms to the pension system, but has also indicated he is open to changes to the government's initial plans. Macron's pledged to reinvent himself and change his policies in the wake of criticism about his handling of the coronavirus. And in a remote part of northwest Botswana, the mystery of unexplained elephant deaths has deepened. A study of the carcasses of hundreds of animals has indicated that they died rapidly. Since May, 356 elephants have been found dead in the Okavango Panhandle. The government has sent samples to Canada, Zimbabwe and South Africa to try and find out why they are dying. So far, poaching has been ruled out, as has anthrax. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg Caroline.
Thank you so much, Leanne Gerrans, with the world news. Well, I'm going to pick up on those details that you gave us about the coronavirus and the impact on the US, because in America, cities are tightening restrictions in the hope of preventing a second wave of coronavirus if they have not already been affected. The number of cases, of course, continues to rise globally. More than 10.7 million people now infected with coronavirus, and perhaps the virus is mutating. At least that's according to the US infectious disease expert Anthony Fauci, warning that it's showing some signs of mutation in a way that could make it easier to spread. Well, for the latest, let's bring in Bloomberg Intelligence's senior pharmaceutical analyst, Sam Fazeli. Good morning. Thanks for joining us, Sam. What do you make, first of all, of what Anthony Fauci was saying? I mean, he talked about it being early days and that it still needed to be verified, but that the coronavirus may be changing, mutating.
Well, hi, good morning. So this is not actually new. Back in April, a group that has republished their research now in a more properly peer-reviewed journal. Back in April, they had highlighted the spread of a mutation that seems to make the virus more infective, and that's how you establish it. When suddenly a version of a virus becomes the prominent one, you try and find out what's different about it, and that's what this is. It's a single amino acid mutation that was identified back in April, and that group, first author paper is Dr. Korber, had highlighted this, as I said, about a couple of months ago now. So it's not like we didn't know, but it's clearly now been established, and folks have analyzed the paper and have found that the findings are solid. So that is something that we need to start seriously thinking about.
Now, Sam, I mean, obviously the search for a vaccine goes on, widely reported, and various progress elements coming through. Yesterday we had this suggestion from Moderna that their late-stage coronavirus vaccine trial had been delayed. Indeed, their shares plunged as a result. I mean, is this a bit of a setback for the search?
Well, no, there are many vaccines in development. Moderna is just one of them. And at the end of the day, we had just the day before that, the opposite from Pfizer, which was tantalizing early, very early human data suggesting that their vaccine is progressing. So, we're dealing with a very complex process of developing a very complex product. So, and here we're talking a month later or a month earlier. Obviously, it's not good when a company is in the spotlight and has been saying repeatedly that we'll get something done by X time, which is always a bit of a problem with biotech companies. But, this is just part for the course where, who knows what kind of problem they might be having. So I'm not that surprised or bothered.
Sam, my main question is, does it make a difference which of these companies comes up with the vaccine, and particularly nationally, does it make a difference? Because, there was some news about CanSino, which is a Chinese vaccine maker, various vaccine makers in different parts of the world. Do you think it makes a difference who comes up with the vaccine first?
Well, I hope not, right? We all hope not. If you look at the behavior of AstraZeneca, they've gone around and signed up volumes, so 300 million doses for the US, 400 million doses of their vaccine for Europe. They're talking in Brazil. They're talking everywhere. So they're opening opportunities for people to have the vaccine to the level that they can. I'm assuming Pfizer will be doing the same. When they said the other day that they'll have 1.2 billion doses in 2021, you don't need all that in the US. It's a two-dose vaccine. If it's successful, That you only need 600 million in the US. So that will cover Europe and US. So
right, Sam.
I hope not.
We all hope not. Sam, thanks very much indeed. That's Bloomberg Intelligence's senior pharmaceutical analyst, Sam Fazeli, bringing us up to speed on the progress of knowledge about the virus, but also the progress of the search for vaccines. And coming up in a moment, we're going to talk to the CFO of British Land, property being a huge issue when it comes to the effect from the virus, and see how British Land are doing. This is Daybreak Europe. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. The art market has passed its first test since lockdown with flying colors and dollars. A 1981 triptych of paintings by Francis Bacon fetched $84.6 million at Sotheby's sales of contemporary, impressionist, and modern art. The global art market has been in a rut since March. The 3 consecutive evening sales were held online and generated $363.2 million, topping Sotheby's low estimate of $326 million for the entire series. A painting by Canadian artist Matthew Wong has reaped a 6,700% return less than a year after the artist's death, from $22,000 initial sale to $1.5 million, with 59 registered bidders from 16 countries in pursuit. Compared to Vincent van Gogh and Edvard Munch, Wong committed suicide in October at age 35, leaving behind about 1,000 paintings and works on paper just as his career was taking off. Visit BloombergPursuits.com for more. I'm Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
If trying to figure out the future of your business is keeping you up at night,
are you seeing it come back at all?
At least you have company.
What do you make of the most recent virus headlines?
How should labor respond?
You're hoping to get political pressure.
Experts, information, breaking news, all day, all night, everywhere.
Do you expect the euro to continue to strengthen? Why even have this hearing?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Are you looking for senior care for your mom or dad but don't know where to start? Hi, I'm Joan London with A Place for Mom. Nobody knows your parent or loved one better than you, and nobody knows senior living better than the experts at A Place for Mom. It's a free service, and we've helped thousands of families find the right place for their mom or dad. There's a place for answers, A Place for Mom. Call today.
Call A Place for Mom at 1-800-391-1755. That's 1-800-391-1755.
President of the Jewish Communal Fund, Zoya.
Hey, I'm Robin, one of the tech experts here to help you at Curry's PC World. I'm not just a voice on the radio. You can now come into your local store and talk tech with a human being like me. Just the news you needed this morning. We've put all the right measures in place to help you again safely in your local Staples Corner store. The tech experts are back in town, so come in and see if that 55-inch TV is perfect for the return of sport. And welcome back to your local Curry's PC World.
In line with government guidelines, face coverings are now compulsory on public transport. At Asda, you can get a 4-pack of Prima disposable face coverings for £2.80. Or a 2-pack of washable face coverings from £2.50. Asda, we're all in this together. Selected stores subject to availability.
Normally, I'd be recording this in a fancy sound studio with a mocha-frocka skinny latte. Instead, I'm in my bathroom. Technology means I can wander around my house reading this script, and people can take a wander around yours with Purple Brick's virtual viewings, or they can safely view it in person if you prefer.
Do you want a cup of tea, love?
Can I get a mocha-frocka skinny latte?
I beg your pardon?
Tea's fine, thank you. Book your free valuation with Purple Bricks.
Fixed fee payable on instruction or after 10 months. Viewing service cost extra.
If you can build that flat-pack wardrobe without looking at the instructions, you've still got it. If you can manage 5 keepy uppies on your first go, you've without question still got it. If you can toss a pancake to the ceiling and not let it hit the floor, surely you've still got it. And if you can just about fit into those jeans you bought 5 years ago, you've definitely still got it. Brute, still got it.
London. Toolstation are here to help get your job safely started and finished, with over 60 branches within the M25. All open with social distancing and contactless click and collect from 5 minutes. And with 20,000 top trade quality products to choose from. Order online now for collection in London branches and get £5 off when you spend over £30 with the code LON530. So, get your job started at toolstation.com. Terms and conditions apply.
Give yourself a Diet Coke break.
Broadcasting live to London on DAB digital radio, to New York, Bloomberg 1130, to Washington DC, Bloomberg 99.1, to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1, to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
A very good morning from London. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Roger Hearing, and you're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
So in the markets this morning, Roger, actually we're doing, well, reasonably well. We're up by 0.1%. What can you say? Technology and retail sector stocks doing the best at the top of the pile. This after a fairly strong session overnight in Asia. Strong China PMI figures helped. Also, in terms of the bond markets this morning, obviously the US is closed for a public holiday. It's July 4th tomorrow. So not much in terms of US action. Stock markets and equity market cash trading is closed. In the rest of the bond markets in Europe, negative yields for German yields this morning, down at the moment at negative 44 basis points for German yields. So we're heading lower in terms of yields really across Europe, including for UK gilt yields. This as we also see a drop in crude oil prices, gold spot price at 17.75. The Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index also weakens just a little bit this morning. There's the markets.
Right, let's have a look at some of today's top stories. Now, Boris Johnson's going to urge people today to act responsibly as pubs in England prepare to reopen, warning he'll act to close parts of the economy again if the virus gets out of control. Restaurants, hotels, cinemas and hairdressers will also be allowed to open their doors tomorrow. In addition, visitors from countries including Germany, France, Spain and Italy will no longer have to observe a 2-week quarantine. That's from July the 10th.
Meanwhile, German lawmakers have ended a legal standoff over the European Central Bank's bond-buying programme. A broad group of MPs voted to back the programme, seen as key to propping up the euro area economy. The dispute was sparked, if you recall, by Germany's top court that ruled that the purchases could be illegal, but this vote means that the Bundesbank can stay in the programme.
And one other headline just crossing the terminal from Europe. The French Prime Minister, Edouard Philippe, has resigned. That's according to the Élysée Palace. We knew there was some things happening in the French government. That seems to be the first of what could be a rather larger reshuffle. Meantime, let's go to the US, where China's sanctions bill has passed Congress. It now heads to President Donald Trump for approval. The legislation would impose sanctions on Chinese officials who crack down on dissent in Hong Kong. The House and the Senate moved quickly to pass the bill after Beijing imposed a new national security law in the city.
Right, those are our top stories. Let's get the latest in terms of world and national news with Bloomberg's Leanne Gerrans. More on the pandemic. Good morning, Leanne.
Good morning, Caroline. The coronavirus is showing some signs of mutating in a way that may make it easier for the pathogen to spread. That's according to U.S. infectious diseases expert Anthony Fauci. But he said it's not clear whether people who become infected with a newer version of the virus fare worse than those with the original strain. It comes as the number of cases continues to surge globally, with more than 10.7 million people infected and 517,000 dead from the disease. Brexit negotiators appear to be homing in on a broad agreement. That's despite talks this week ending a day earlier than planned. Officials told us the two teams are beginning to near a so-called landing zone that could form the basis of a deal. The two sides will regroup in London next week. Both acknowledge major sticking points do remain. Ghislaine Maxwell has been arrested, charged with helping Jeffrey Epstein sexually abuse girls. The federal indictment comes a year after Epstein's arrest. Maxwell was his close associate for years, but she has long denied any involvement of his sexual offences. U.S. prosecutors say she helped him identify, befriend and groom his victims. Her lawyer declined to comment on these charges. And Hong Kong has declared illegal one of the major slogans chanted by hundreds of thousands of pro-democracy protesters. Bloomberg's Karen Lee reports.
In what it called a solemn statement, the government said the rallying cry, "Liberate Hong Kong, Revolution of Our Time," was now illegal under the law barring secession, terrorism, subversion of state power, and collusion with foreign forces. The sweeping law carries sentences as long as life in prison and was made public only as it took effect earlier this week. In Hong Kong, Karen Lee, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg Roger.
Leanne, thanks for that. Now, on to another big interview this morning. One of the UK's largest commercial property firms has announced ambitious new plans to deliver net zero emissions across its entire portfolio by the end of the decade. Property Portfolio's Sandra Kilhoff is standing by. So, Sandra, tell us more.
Yes, Roger, British Land has announced a new sustainability strategy that commits it to cutting embodied carbon by half and carbon intensity by 75% against a new baseline for 2019. It is a very ambitious investment at a time, of course, when property firms have seen a drop in income following the pandemic. So for more, I am very pleased to be joined by CFO Simon Carter. Simon, how is this new strategy different from your previous 5-year sustainability program?
Good morning, Sandra. There are some differences with our previous program. So 5 years ago, we set ourselves a number of targets. We actually set about 20 targets, and a number of those were on the environmental side. We were focused on reducing operational emissions from our portfolio, and we actually managed to reduce them by 75%. And so with this strategy looking forward, we're trying to reduce them by a further 73%, which does make it pretty stretching. The area that it's different in, I suppose, is us focusing on embodied carbon in our developments and setting a explicit and demanding target there. Because of our business, 50% of our carbon footprint in any year arises from the developments that we undertake as well as the emissions from our portfolio.
But are these targets really feasible given the fall in income that a lot of companies like yourselves have experienced because of COVID-19? Can you really make such an ambitious investment given those pressures?
We believe so. Sustainable buildings is something that our customers are really asking for. So in this situation, we can do the right thing and actually drive commercial advantage. Where we deliver sustainable buildings, we think we get better rents and we lease the buildings more quickly. So actually it's more of an investment than a cost. And we made good progress in our carbon emissions previously with a lot of low-cost initiatives. Many of the initiatives that you use to reduce carbon have really great payoff periods. It's some of the sort of best investment we can make at British Land.
And we know that Canadian asset management Brookfield, they took a big stake in your company earlier this year. How are they seeing this investment? Has their stake impacted your movements when it comes to your portfolio in any way?
No, not at all. We have a number of big institutional investors. Brookfield are one of those investors. They've been investors in the past. So, our dialogue with them is exactly the same as it is with any other investor.
If we look a bit closer at the pandemic impact, I know you reported stronger than expected footfall and sales on your English assets earlier this week. Are you over the worst of the virus impact now?
Well, I think with the easing of lockdown and non-essential retail opening up, clearly footfall and sales, as you highlight, have improved. We're now at about 60 to 70% of the footfall that we would have been at the same time last year, and that's come up from about 20 to 30% when there was lockdown and only essential retail was open. But I think one statistic we were particularly encouraged with was stores that are opening across our portfolio are trading only a little bit below the levels of last year. They're trading at effectively 91% in terms of sales. And we expected our retail parks to perform better because they're open air, they're better for social distancing, they're more applicable in an omni-channel world where you have in-store fulfillment, click and collect. And actually on those stores, sales are slightly ahead of where they were last year, which I think is encouraging, as I say.
But is that really enough to mitigate rental income falling, for instance, from offices and retail in particular, two of the harder hit sectors?
Sure. In offices, actually, our rent collection's been very strong. At the March quarter date, For March, we've collected 97% of rents. And then June, which is the quarter date that's just gone, we're at 90%, and we expect that to continue to increase to be a similar level as March. Then in retail, yes, clearly a number of our retail and particularly F&B and leisure customers have been really impacted by the virus because they've been closed. So rent collection has been lower. We saw this early as a consequence, and we wanted to support those customers that have been particularly hit. So in March, we actually offered to defer rent for effectively a period of time so that they could pay it over 6 quarters from September 20 to help in that way. So our rent collection was lower in March and June than previous periods, but I think as stores continue to open and if we avoid a second peak, then we would expect September rent collection to be much higher. And of course, at this period in time, our customers have never been as reliant as they are on us now because we're effectively working hand in hand with them to help them open their stores.
Yes, Simon, thank you so much. A positive outlook towards the third quarter after what has been a torrid start for property here in the UK. That was British Land CFO Simon Carter joining me here on Daybreak Europe.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
What's the bottom line? That answer may be uncomfortably uncertain these days. But corporate leaders facing pressure on profitability know one thing for sure. GEP can help. GEP's unified procurement and supply chain solutions help reduce costs, improve performance, and boost EBITDA, helping great companies stay on track and primed for the next phase of the business cycle. GEP, helping the world's best companies do better. Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at seic.com/seize change.
Hey, I'm Robin, one of the tech experts here to help you at Curry's PC World. I'm not just a voice on the radio. You can now come into your local store and talk tech with a human being like me. Just the news you needed this morning. We've put all the right measures in place to help you again safely in your local Staples Corner store. The tech experts are back in town. So come in and see if that fridge can hold enough for your hungry household. And welcome back to your local Curry's PC World.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Friday morning by the scruff of the neck. Take this sunshine as an omen and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
How do we control coronavirus now? Listen to Claudia. She's a care worker.
I got the call from NHS Test and Trace. Told I'd been in contact with someone with coronavirus. Couldn't believe it. I had to isolate at home for 14 days. Couldn't go to work, couldn't go to the shops, couldn't get out to exercise. I didn't even feel ill. But you know what? To protect my family, my friends, my community, well, you just do it, don't you?
Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
When you're facing a problem, like how to make an electric car more efficient, you could sit down and talk it through. But at Honda, we decided to listen to the wind tunnel. With wing mirrors? Or without? With? Without? With? Without? Or with cameras instead of wing mirrors? The new Honda E with wing cameras, not mirrors, because we listen to the wind. Honda, the power of dreams.
Stay close to college hoops conversation with the College Basketball Talk podcast from NBC Sports. Join Rob Doster and Bobby Reagan for weekly recaps of what's happening in every conference, nostalgic flashbacks to classic games, and big picture discussions on the future of the sport.
Yes, they found a way to ensure that there was a financial incentive for be able to get paid for 4K to go there, if that makes sense. But it's not, there was still a recruitment involved, right? Let me think about it like this.
Search College Basketball Talk on TuneIn to listen.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
To help keep you and your loved ones safe, TuneIn has the latest guidelines from the CDC. Outdoor gatherings? Wash your hands and don't touch your face. Stay at least 6 feet from people you don't live with. Wear a mask. Don't share food, toys, or other items, and avoid shared surfaces. Participate in events like these infrequently. For the latest stories and updates on COVID-19, search Coronavirus News on TuneIn. Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg QuickTake. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Good morning, I'm Sandra Kilhoff with this Bloomberg Business Flash. Now, it's a bit of a mixed trading day here in Europe, with the FTSE lower by 1/10, the CAC 40 down 2/10, the DAX slightly higher though, and the Stock 600 currently flat. US futures are in the green. Of course, though, US markets are closed today for a holiday. It is the 4th of July tomorrow, so we're not seeing any cash treasury trade either with those markets closed. But generally, we did see a bit of a risk-on mood in Asia earlier this morning, with the Hang Seng still trading at up 0.7%. This after, though, stronger than expected US jobs data yesterday and a better than expected Caixin Services PMI reading this morning. So over in the currency markets, the dollar is flat. We're seeing the yen at 107.5, sterling at 124, the euro at 112. Like I said, no cash treasury trade today, but we are seeing 10-year bund yields slightly weaker at -43, 10-year gilt yields at 18 basis points this morning. Finally, over in the commodity markets, gold is headed for the 4th week of gains, currently at $1,776 a troy ounce. We are seeing copper set to erase its losses this year. Copper holdings continuing to slip, and that is what's boosting the price there. Finally, oil a bit lower today after reaching its highest level in almost 4 months yesterday. WTI still above $40 a barrel, though. Brent above 42. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Leanne Garens with more on what's going on around the world.
Sandra, thank you. States across the U.S. are tightening lockdown rules as virus cases continue to accelerate. Texas is making face masks compulsory. It's a reversal for Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who had long opposed the move. U.S. infectious disease expert Anthony Fauci is warning the virus may be mutating, and that is making it easier for the pathogen to spread. The China sanctions bill has passed the U.S. Congress. It now heads to President Donald Trump for approval. The legislation would impose sanctions on Chinese officials who cracked down on dissent in Hong Kong. The House and Senate moved quickly to pass the bill after Beijing imposed a new national security law in the city. And not only do the pubs reopen tomorrow in England, but for adrenaline junkies, rental e-scooters will become legal on UK roads too. That's after the government published the rules companies must follow to deploy the electric vehicles. Large-scale trials can start at the weekend, and they'll last for over a year. The government will closely monitor activity and public feedback with the view of fully legalising scooters in the future. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg. Caroline.
Thanks so much, Leanne Gerrans. E-scooters, yikes, they go at quite a speed, and it's one more set of constituents on the roads in London. I'll be watching out over the next 12 months for that. Right, let's talk a little bit about the markets then this morning, and some comments coming through from Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor. I mean, repeating really what she has said in recent weeks to the upper house in Germany. Europe's economy is being badly shaken by the coronavirus, and also that basically the support deal needs to be agreed quickly. Europe needs to agree on the bailout package, basically on the recovery fund. She's talked about the EU recovery fund negotiations, though, being rocky. That was her word, rocky, and that time is pressing to reach an agreement on the recovery fund. Joining us this morning is Eric Nielsen, Global Chief Economist at UniCredit Bank. Look, the mood in Europe really does seem to be around pushing for more recovery funds, more support for workers, even though the virus seems to be in retreat. There's a real kind of sense of concern that there may be a second wave at some point.
No, I don't think that there's a fear of a second wave, but I think in Europe you've come to a stage where you kind of feel you can have selected or smart closed down or smaller areas. I think what you're seeing here from Merkel is more a determination to get the European Recovery Fund approved so it can start to disperse very early next year for the recovery, right? We have had the cushioning, which was done by national fiscal authorities, and now we need additional stimulus to get people back to spend and invest. And I think this is really what it's about.
Okay, so do you think that the furlough programs, which are currently protecting some 50 million jobs across Europe, I mean, do you think that they're going to stay in place? It does seem to be that there is a hesitation to pull those back, even though, yeah, as you say, maybe there is this idea that we can have a localized lockdown, but it seems like governments are hesitating.
Yes, I think you're right. This is the stunning thing. The difference between the U.S. and Europe is that we have furloughs on both sides, but in America they are registered as unemployed, while in Europe they are not. They are registered still as employed because you're attached to the company. So what you saw in America was this enormous increase in unemployment, and now 2 months they've had good numbers coming back against still a big hole to fill. While in Europe we hardly had any increase in unemployment at all, but people are still furloughed. And the governments, I think, will keep these programs in place until businesses are really ready to employ people again.
Yeah, Eric, it's very interesting. I mean, just in the last few moments, you had the France June Services final PMI reading, which was a beat, slight beat, 50.7. The preliminary had been 50.3. So a sense that there is, perhaps elements of reason to be more optimistic, that Europe has actually ridden this one out rather better than many parts of the world, perhaps better than the United States. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I'm almost sure this will come down with that conclusion when we have seen it all through. The Europeans did well with the furlough programs, and they did well with the guarantees to prevent the liquidity crisis from being a solvency crisis. And the fiscal measures in Europe were more targeted. In America, you had the famous check for everybody, which was kind of nice, probably. But I think most economists would argue that is such a broad level fiscal expenditure is not as effective. And then the big issue for America is, of course, whether when they stop this acceleration now in cases, and whether they have to take the Chinese and European way of locking down the economy sometime later this year, next year, or they go through sort of a herd immunization thing with lots of deaths. It's really quite a lot of uncertainty in America now, where I think, just like in China and Europe, we think we can see the light at the end of the tunnel now, and things are bouncing back.
Yeah, I mean, the former US Treasury Secretary Larry Summers calling it spectacular incompetence in terms of the US government's handling of the epidemic. I mean, obviously, I mean, he's not a Republican supporter, clearly, but I mean, it is the view, an interesting one. Look, what about China then in all of this? I mean, okay, the US is a mess in terms of dealing with a growing outbreak there, but actually slightly better than expected news out of China, and there is kind of a lot of optimism that that the Chinese model is the one that we should adopt, and that reaps the economic benefits. Are you a believer in that?
Yes, I mean, I think it's I don't know if we should call it Chinese model or whatever. I mean, they did it very well in a sense. But if you sort of just step back, if somebody came to you, never heard of the virus, somebody came to you and say, there's this virus that spreads with a certain degree of risk of death. What should we do? You have to start to isolate people, and in whatever fashion or form or how drastic, we don't know until we know how contagious it is. And that's where the Chinese went overboard, maybe. In Europe and in Italy, they did very, very significant isolation also. And then when you see the numbers come down, we have seen these type of epidemics before, then you open up again and you do what you can to cushion the economy. So I think if with the strength of hindsight, you look at the European model, if you will, you learn from the Chinese. It's pretty much the way you should do it. I would have done a little bit more fiscal in Southern Europe, but that's a matter of detail now. But I think it's a big hit to the economy. But I really think the policymakers have done well in this crisis.
But Eric, let me put to you, I mean, a sense perhaps that in some ways some might say the cure almost is worse than the disease, because talking about Ray Dalio, he's been talking about the ways in which capital markets, he says, are no longer free, that there's just too much pressure from governments and central banks that the market can't operate properly. Do you agree?
To a degree, yes. I think it doesn't. But let me start by saying this does not mean that they did wrong in this. I mean, this was ultimately a health crisis, not an economic crisis. The economic crisis was an effect of the health crisis, and people's life must come first, in my opinion. So I think this is important. Then you do what you have to do, but in the process, I think he's right to say that markets are not really determining the price of treasuries today or bunds or what have you, because the central banks are all over them, right? So there's a really interesting question to be had down the line, how the central banks give back markets to the private sector, right? This is and this we can have a long and interesting conversation about, right?
Yeah, listen, I think that is going to be the question for the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. So, Eric Nielsen, I'm sure we're going to talk to you again about that. Thank you so much for coming on Bloomberg Radio this morning. That's Eric Nielsen, Global Chief Economist at UniCredit Bank, also on Bloomberg Television this morning. So really interesting. As we also just get the latest June services PMI numbers for Germany, actually this time below the 50, below expansion. So actually 47.3. Yes, a beat on the preliminary, but still in contraction territory for German June services PMI numbers, Roger.
Yep, and as we look at the markets, as we come to the top of this hour, almost an hour since the European opening, stocks 600 absolutely flat, FTSE 100 weaker by 1/10%, and the DAX stronger by 1/10%. Slightly mixed picture out there. This is Daybreak Europe. This is Bloomberg.
For the friendships, for the fresh air, for the space to grow, for the knowledge, for the sport, for the outdoor education, for the wide horizons, for the academic excellence, for the future. Unleash your child's education at West Buckland School, a co-educational day and boarding school in beautiful North Devon. If you're moving to the southwest for a better quality of life, this is education without compromise, in what the Good Schools Guide called a gem of a school in an exceptional location. To see for yourself, find us at westbuckland.com. Hey Hi, I'm Robin, one of the tech experts here to help you at Curry's PC World. I'm not just a voice on the radio. You can now come into your local store and talk tech with a human being like me. Just the news you needed this morning. We've put all the right measures in place to help you again safely in your local Staples Corner store. The tech experts are back in town, so come in and talk laptops and washing machines or fridges and TVs. And welcome back to your local Curry's PC World.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. We can replace your battery at over 700 stores and garages, or even at your home or work with our mobile experts, so you can enjoy an engine that starts first time, every time, and start enjoying the open road again.
Are we nearly there yet?
From battery replacements to tyre fittings to MOTs, there really is no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
Today at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is Bloomberg Radio.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
The idea is to really hold the economy in suspended animation until we get control of this virus.
We are very much in a picture of monetary dominance.
We will get slower growth. I mean, let's not get confused about that.
We are in a national crisis. I think it is for all parties to pull together.
The euro area is facing an economic contraction of a magnitude and speed that are unprecedented in peacetime.
Bloomberg Daybreak Europe on Bloomberg Radio.
A very good morning from London. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And a good morning from the Bloomberg office in Berlin. I'm Matt Miller. Also, even though we're not quite there yet, because it's a U.S. holiday, I'm going to go ahead and say happy 4th of July.
Thank you very much. I'll take that for Americans out there, and I'm married to one, so, you know, we kind of celebrate too. This, of course, as we are going to have our own special Super Saturday in England anyway, we'll be able to go to the pub and get our hair done and so on. This, as also there is some breaking news on the Bloomberg terminal in terms of services data out of the euro area this morning. Euro area June services PMI still mired in contraction, but actually better than the preliminary number. 48.3 is the services PMI number, so that's really crucial. I mean, the whole idea of reopening, isn't it, to get services back up and running in England and elsewhere?
Yeah, and we've had some more and more positive data. If you look at the surprise index, the U.S. has been just killing it. And yesterday, of course, you had the non-farm payrolls number adding 4.8 million jobs and a revision to the previous number up 2.3 million. But Europe is starting to get closer to the zero line right now. So climbing back towards positive territory in terms of economic surprises. And maybe Super Saturday pushes you up over the top there in England, right? It's only England. It's not all of the UK. Scotland, I've noticed, has been much more conservative.
Yeah, much more. And so has Wales too. And there has been at least one local lockdown in the city of Leicester. And I note this, actually, Sky News was reporting that they have a poll out this morning saying that more than 8 out of 10 Britons would would lock down for a second time if they were asked. So actually, the Brits are feeling really quite cautious, at least according to that poll. But let's take you to the...
I would be for like a 6-month every year lockdown. Yes. I loved the lockdown.
What about going to your favourite pubs?
Well, that's the thing. In Berlin, there really aren't any good pubs. And to be honest, I lived in New York for decades. Also, no good pubs. Some clubs, some bars, but there's nothing in my mind as inviting, as comfortable as a good London pub. If I were you, I would have my list ready. And I would just, be knocking them off one after the other tomorrow.
On that note, because you've mentioned it so many times, I will give a shout out to my local, and I don't call it a pub, I actually call it a boozer. Sir Robert Peel. It is definitely a local boozer, but there we are. Because you've mentioned your favourite so often, I think I will too. But look, let me take you through the data just briefly. US Stock 600 right now up by just barely 1/10%.
All right. Okay, morning again. I'm placing an order to buy Canadian dollar at the price of 1.35620. right here. Position opened. I'm long on Canadian dollar.
In the direction of the gastropubby kind of area rather than, the boozers that you guys were talking about earlier. But
oh, no, I'm right there with you. I'm with you 100%. I love the gastropub.
Absolutely, and can't wait to get back to those. But I suspect my son will have the upper hand and we'll go back to his favorite pizza restaurant to begin with. So the neighborhood pizza. I mean, if I were to let me give a shout out to Pie Pizza in my neighborhood in Battersea. So there you go.
It's important around the world. I'm also going to say, if you're into the gastro thing, Admiral Codrington's, delicious. In Knightsbridge, if you want to go to in Fulham, there's a great one called the Salisbury Tavern.
Yeah, loads of good places to go to. But then what does, Supriya, actually all of this reopening mean then in terms of investing? Because the other thing that we're looking to, obviously, is the Chancellor Rishi Sunak next week. A lot of pressure in the UK, but also across Europe, to kind of extend the furlough schemes, to give more support. We had comments from Angela Merkel this morning about trying to get the European bailout package done more swiftly. Does more need to be done?
Yeah, and it is a question mark at this point. The fact is that there's a delicate balance we're striking here. We need the economy to, we need activity to resume, but at the same time, we need to provide support to the economy as it recovers. And what the right balance and pace of those two elements are is something we'll have to discover as we go along. There has been talk of pent-up demand. We've certainly seen in the U.S., for instance, if you look at disposable incomes, they've gone up. It was 14% year on year in the last count, because people have just not been able to spend, and they've seen transfers go up in the U.S. at least, and to some extent here. And the question is, as those transfers from the government get phased out, for instance, the furlough scheme has already, will start being phased out through October. Will consumers tighten their belts, especially if we see, growing job losses? We've seen signs of that in the UK already, and that, the government will have to find right balance and learn by doing, in a way. And there is a lot of risk associated with that. Yes, consumers may initially spend, but will they then pare back if they're no longer confident about their job prospects, for instance? So we'll have to see. A big question mark indeed.
Well, you do already see savings rates going up everywhere, even in notoriously spendy countries like the U.S. Consumers there just prefer to borrow and spend more than they make normally, but now their savings rates are shooting up. Isn't that going to be the same for the UK?
Yeah, savings rates have shot up everywhere, and partly that's because those transfer payments have gone up, and partly that's because expenditures have declined because people haven't been able to spend. So, but that's, by the way, that's we can also see that in corporates, in a way, because they have borrowed so much. It's not quite the savings rate, but they've borrowed so much, thanks to government facilities, drawing on credit lines, and indeed taking advantage of the opening up of the credit market. And so they've basically been posting a lot of those, sort of borrowings, to the extent that they haven't spent it, in things like money market funds. So between institutional investors, retail investors, and corporates, the holdings, net assets and money market funds have really shot up. And that's part of the reason, actually, we're quite reasonably positive on risk assets, because that will start to be deployed. We're already seeing signs that has reached an inflection point, and money has started to come out of money market funds. So that's something we're watching. It's sort of the flip side of that savings rate we were talking about.
You don't have any exposure to high yield. Why not?
Yeah, we've steered clear of areas of significant leverage. I just mentioned that, corporate borrowing had gone up significantly, especially in the U.S., but everywhere. And that will have repercussions, especially if we start seeing margin pressure down the road, as we would expect. And that will mean that, corporates with more stretched balance sheets will be challenged. Yes, they've been able to avail of liquidity and, draw those credit lines, but will earnings come back? And that's the question mark. So we've really focused on our equity portfolio on areas of the market with less leverage, with higher cash on hand, things like that. And also that's meant that we've had exposure to the investment grade area of credit, not high yield, because we just don't think we're being compensated enough to justify, to make up for what we see as, sort of rising defaults from here.
All right, very interesting stuff, Supriya. Thank you so much for joining us today. Great to have you on Bloomberg Television earlier, and thanks for sticking around on Bloomberg Radio. Supriya Menon there. She is Senior Multi-Asset Strategist at Pictet Asset Management.
Right, let's get all the latest in global news headlines with Roger Herring. Good morning, Roger.
Good morning, Caroline. French Prime Minister Edouard Philippe has resigned. That's according to a statement from the Elysee Palace. It comes as the President, Emmanuel Macron, is hoping to revamp his presidency, including a new team. Macron wants to continue pushing for pension reform, and that's a very controversial issue in France. Act responsibly. That's the message from the Prime Minister Boris Johnson today when he speaks at a press conference. It comes as pubs prepare to reopen across the country. But Johnson says the UK is not out of the woods, and he's prepared to shut parts of the economy again if coronavirus cases surge. The virus is showing some signs of mutating in a way that may make it easier for the pathogen to spread, according to the US infectious diseases expert Anthony Fauci. But Fauci said it's not clear whether people who become infected with a newer strain of the virus fare worse than those with the original strain.
Right now, if you look at the number of cases, it's quite disturbing. And we're setting records practically every day of new cases.
Now, that comes as the number of cases continues to surge globally, with more than 10.7 million people infected and 517,000 dead from the disease. And Hong Kong has declared illegal one of the major slogans chanted by hundreds of thousands of pro-democracy protesters. Bloomberg's Karen Lee reports.
In what it called a solemn statement, the government said the rallying cry, "Liberate Hong Kong, revolution of our time," was now illegal under the law barring secession, terrorism, subversion of state power, and collusion with foreign forces. The sweeping law carries sentences as long as life in prison and was made public only as it took effect earlier this week. In Hong Kong, Karen Lee, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Roger Herring. This is Bloomberg Caroline.
Thanks so much, Roger. The morning sports news now with Lewis Mason.
Liverpool's first game as Premier League champions ended in a 4-0 thrashing at the hands of former title holders Manchester City last night. Jurgen Klopp's side received a guard of honour on their return to action, but City promptly halted their party. Even in defeat, Klopp tells Sky Sports News he was happy with his players.
It's not nice, it's not what we wanted, but I wanted to see that we have really the right attitude, and I saw that, and with that I'm fine, and the result we have to take.
Tottenham boss Jose Mourinho says he'd be risking a suspension if he revealed his true thoughts on VAR. His side had a goal ruled out by the video assistant referee during their 3-1 Premier League defeat to Sheffield United last night. And the long-awaited Formula One season finally gets underway today. Practice takes place ahead of Sunday's Austrian Grand Prix.
All right, so that was your look at the European sports. When we come back here on this 3rd of July on Bloomberg Radio, we're going to talk about, a Bloomberg opinion piece showing you your personal fitness data is a very hot commodity. I mean, you know that about data, but this is especially interesting. Google's $2.1 billion Fitbit is being scrutinized by the EU, and we'll look at why with Bloomberg opinion columnist Alex Webb next. This is Bloomberg.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Today, nearly all business is international business. The same goes for business disputes. That's why the International Center for Dispute Resolution provides a faster, more efficient approach to dispute resolution across borders. Backed by the American Arbitration Association, the ICDR is the world's leading provider of dispute resolution services. Find out why global expertise matters. Visit ICDR.org.
Hi, I'm Danica Patrick. Watching my nieces grow, play, and learn is amazing, but not every child gets to be carefree. 1 in 6 kids in the U.S. are hungry. This breaks my heart, and it's something that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and gives it to families in need. To help, visit feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's John Farrow.
Here's a take from Bank of America on the gold price. He writes the following, Francisco Blanch: as central banks and governments double their balance sheets and fiscal deficits respectively, we have also decided to up our 18-month gold target from $2,000 to $3,000 an ounce. Francisco, $3,000 gold. What's the driving force behind that call?
Hey, Jonathan. So there's 3 things really to keep in mind, right? First of all is fiscal policy is extremely lax. Every government is essentially monetizing that debt through monetary policy. That's the second reason. And then the third reason is bank deposits are ballooning and investors don't really know what to do with that money. So if you put the 3 together, right, extremely lax fiscal, extremely lax monetary policy, and a huge increase in bank deposits, I think there's a pretty good chance here that we'll see a big rotation into gold, driving prices a little higher. Investors are confused. They don't know what to do with their asset allocations, and I think that a lot of them will end up choosing to go for the yellow metal as an alternative to cash in their portfolios.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg QuickTake. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg's European headquarters in London, I'm Danny Berger with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. We're looking at somewhat of a cautious trading day here to end the week. Maybe it's that U.S. payrolls buzz somewhat coming off. Also, Americans have the Independence Day holiday off, so that means volumes here are thin. Euro Stoxx 50, for example, volumes are 40% off of what they usually are at this time of day. We're looking at the Stoxx 600 trading just 4 basis points lower, so not a ton of action. That's trading at 368.13. U.S. futures, though, still trading even though the cash market is closed. U.S. futures, S&P 500, same action as Stoxx 600. Not much movement there, just slightly lower, though. NASDAQ futures are trading higher by 0.1%. That happens after yesterday's close, where the NASDAQ hit a record high versus the S&P 500. In terms of individual stocks, one of the big stories here, the movers rather, is Delivery Hero up nearly 5% after its orders for the second quarter basically doubled. A lot more people ordering food at home. Now, in FX land, we're looking at the dollar slipping. It is on track for its first weekly drop in a month. So the Bloomberg dollar spot trading at 12.14. That's down just 6 basis points. Now, when it comes to the pound and the euro, not much action here against the dollar, just slightly weaker. Pound trading at 1.24. We're also looking at the euro trading at 1.12. Keep in mind, Brexit talks are inching closer, so that might punch around the pound as we get closer to that deadline. Now, in bonds, we don't have the direction from the 10-year since the cash market isn't open in the U.S. That means not too much movement. Trading in ranges here. Bund 10-year yields falling less than a basis point to a negative 43 basis points. BTP is at 1.19. That will be a March low. Oil dropping more than 1%. In New York, WTI trading at $40 a barrel. Brent trading at $42.58 a barrel. And gold continuing to get a bit, however small it is. It's going back and forth now. Little change, trading at $1,774 a barrel. It only needs to go a little bit higher to get at the highest price since 2012. So if that gets a bid, look for that milestone. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Roger Hearing on more what's going on around the world. Roger.
Thanks, Danny. Brexit negotiators appear to be homing in on a broad agreement. That's despite talks this week ending a day earlier than planned. Officials told us the two teams are beginning to near a so-called landing zone that could form the basis of a deal. The two sides will regroup in London next week. Both acknowledge major sticking points remain. Ghislaine Maxwell has been arrested, charged with helping Jeffrey Epstein sexually abuse girls. The federal indictment comes a year after Epstein's arrest. Maxwell was his close associate for years. But she has long denied involvement in any of his sexual offences. US prosecutors say she helped him identify, befriend and groom his victims. Her lawyer declined to comment on the charges. And in a remote part of northwest Botswana, the mystery of unexplained elephant deaths has deepened. A study of the carcasses of hundreds of animals has indicated that they died rapidly. And since May, 356 elephants have been found dead in the Okavango Panhandle. The government's sent samples to Canada, Zimbabwe and South Africa to try and find out why they are dying. So far, poaching has been ruled out, as has anthrax. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Roger Hearing. This is Bloomberg.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
It is 9:20 in the city. Time to check in with Bloomberg Opinion. We're joined by opinion columnist Alex Webb, who's writing about Google's more than $2 billion Fitbit deal, more than $2 billion Fitbit deal, and why it's being scrutinized by the EU. So, Alex, happy, well, I guess it's not the 4th of July yet, but happy Super Saturday tomorrow. What have you got on the Fitbit deal?
So this deal was agreed at the start of the year, and last year, in fact, and the European Commission and a bunch of other regulators are looking at it, and the Commission is set to announce by 20th of July whether it'll clear the deal or extend the investigation into a second phase. And a bunch of groups, 20 of them, signed a letter on Thursday, which they sent to actually 7 jurisdictions, including the EU and the US, are urging them to look at it more closely. And the thing that's interesting here, this is different from your normal antitrust. Google does not have a smartwatch, does not have a fitness tracker. So this isn't about consolidating the market in that sense and consolidating control. But of course, it has a huge data business. And knowing your fitness activity, what you're walking, you're running, you're swimming, everything, could be really valuable for other parts of its business, not least the advertising, the price revenue.
Yeah, I mean, it is amazing, isn't it? So then what might be the next steps? What do you think that Europe could do? I mean, antitrust is obviously the favoured method of Europe to try to, I guess, depends on your perspective, but get a grip on Silicon Valley companies, have an impact in terms of what happens with Europeans and their interaction with those businesses.
It is. It certainly seems to have been, Europe's preferred tool for tackling the worst instincts of big tech. And I think the thing is here, it seems unlikely they'll block the deal in its entirety. I think what looks likely is they will ask for some behavioural remedies. That means that you don't necessarily sell off parts of the business or sell perhaps data or give data to competitors, but you might change the way that you operate it. And that might just mean you're only allowed to merge Fitbit data with existing Google data from individuals if you have their express permission. That's the way Google handles Nest, its home automation acquisition that it made 6 years ago. It only merges that data with their permission. I personally think there's a lot more that it could do. If you think about if you have an Apple Watch, your fitness data that's on that watch only goes to the iPhone, and you can back it up encrypted to the cloud. Apple has no visibility into your fitness data. I think that the EU would do well, and perhaps other regulators follow suit, to say that to prohibit Google essentially from taking data off the watch. Then it becomes, a pure hardware play, and not about data.
Never enough time with you, Alex. And I have to say, Angela Merkel earlier said Europe needs digital sovereignty to compete globally. I'm going to have to call you later to have you translate that, because I'm not sure 100% what she meant, but I know that you know what she meant. Our opinion columnist Alex Webb there. Never enough time with him, Carolyn.
Yeah.
I'd like to get
He does the best
15
stories.
minutes with Alex.
Yeah, I know. It's all the gadgets that everybody's got and uses, and he understands the key to all of them. Right, coming out next on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, we're going to talk about Super Saturday. That's next. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The new retail normal may well be online. Bloomberg Intelligence says e-commerce sales in the U.S. could double to nearly a quarter of all sales in 2024 from 2019 levels.
People are going to be really hesitant to go back into stores.
Katrina Lake is CEO of a retail clothing business built online, Stitch Fix. You work with a stylist, they send you clothing you try on at home.
I don't know that many people are really excited to go back into a department store and try 20 things on in a fitting room.
She does have some numbers to back that up. Clothing sales during the pandemic lockdowns.
Against a backdrop that was showing 80% decline, of course, we're happy to have had just a 9% decline.
But there are some businesses where online may not work as well. The owner of Boston's Flair Bridal says a wedding gown is a specialty purchase that buyers need to see in real time, not virtually. Still, Lake says the next year or so will be difficult for all clothing sellers.
There is no question that people are going to buy less clothes this year than they did last year.
Joan Doniger, Bloomberg Radio.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Who's in your corner? At Commonwealth Financial Network, our advisors would say we are. Our supportive environment lets you be true to yourself, and our culture of accountability means we don't just ask for your feedback. We act on it, so we can deliver the solutions you need to enrich the lives of your clients and build the business you've always dreamed of. Ready to discover the difference? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor.
Asset managers who sees... Hey, I'm Robin, one of the tech experts, here to help you at Curry's PC World. I'm not just a voice on the radio. You can now come into your local store and talk tech with a human being like me. Just the news you needed this morning. We've put all the right measures in place to help you again safely in your local Staples Corner store. The tech experts are back in town. So come in and see if that washing machine can handle all that laundry. And welcome back to your local Curry's PC World.
In line with government guidelines, face coverings are now compulsory on public transport. At Asda, you can get a 4-pack of Prima disposable face coverings for £2.80. Or a 2-pack of washable face coverings from £2.50. Asda, we're all in this together. Selected stores subject to availability.
London. Toolstation are here to help get your job safely started and finished, with over 60 branches within the M25. All open with social distancing and contactless click and collect from 5 minutes. And with 20,000 top trade quality products to choose from. Order online now for collection in London branches and get £5 off when you spend over £30 with the code LON530. So, get your job started at toolstation.com. Terms and conditions apply.
How do we control coronavirus now? This is Scott. He's a nurse.
NHS Test and Trace helps stop the spread of the virus in our communities. If you've got symptoms, even mild ones, get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we can trace the people you've been in contact with and contain the virus. So get tested and protect each other.
To get a test, go to nhs.uk/coronavirus or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Honda. We're not a car company. We're more of a listening company. And now our ears have brought our attention to where people feel most comfortable. The lounge. So we asked ourselves, what could Honda do to innovate in this space? Well, how about more space? Calm and uncluttered, with modern yet retro styling, and built-in screens compatible with your games console. It's the most comfortable lounge you've ever driven. Introducing the new Honda E, our small electric city car. Honda. The power of dreams.
Give yourself a Diet Coke break.
Broadcasting live to London on DAB digital radio, to New York, Bloomberg 1130, to Washington DC, Bloomberg 99.1, to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1, to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Good morning from the Bloomberg Bureau in Berlin. I'm Matt Miller.
And here in London, I'm Caroline Hepke. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Take a quick look at your data. We check it for you every 15 minutes here on Bloomberg Radio. And we are looking at...
Okay, guys, I'm placing an order to sell short British pound at the price of 1.24655. Okay, 1.24655. Okay, if it will reach this level, we will own short position on British pound. All right.
0.3, so not a 50, but better than anticipated and better than the preliminary number. UK services PMI also out up to 47.1, and the preliminary was 47. So it looks like the PMIs are improving, but they're still not really to expansion outside of France, and the economic surprises aren't to the level that we've seen them in the U.S., especially after yesterday's jobs beat, 4.8 million jobs added in the U.S. U.S. Equity indexes, it has to be said, U.S. markets will be closed today for the Independence Day holiday, but we do see S&P futures and Dow futures trading slightly down, NASDAQ futures trading slightly higher.
In the meantime, I place stop on profit for United States dollar against Canadian dollar at 1.3564. If it will go and reach this level, we will be in profit of £200. So stop on profit placed just right now.
This will really mean in terms of restaurants reopening. Joining us this morning is Bloomberg's chief food critic, Richard Vines. Really good to have you on the programme, Richard. Love the way that you always cover the wonderful food in the restaurants, but also the business side of this. What do you think that the easing the lockdown tomorrow, first of all, means for diners?
Well, thank you very much, Caroline. It's a very exciting day tomorrow. Personally, my last meal out was on March 16th, so everyone's very excited to go back to restaurants. The bookings are really heavy. They're packed. Places like the Wolsey, are full in the evening. So great for diners. So it's going to be a bit different. Waiters in masks and all that kind of thing, wearing gloves. social distancing, but I can't wait.
Where do you think we're going to see the most reservations, or what tables are the hardest to get right now, Richard?
The hardest to get a call by Claire Smith, a 2-Michelin-star restaurant in London. The Wolves is very difficult for tomorrow, and where I'm going personally, the Ivy. But it's the restaurateurs are a bit disappointed. Reservations next week are not as busy as normal. I was speaking to Jeremy King, who owns the Wolseley, and he says it's nothing like normal demand. Also, Andrew Wong at restaurant A Wong, one of my favourite restaurants in London, he said it's surprised it hasn't picked up a bit more.
Yeah, well, and I wonder whether that has something to do with the demographic of it. Perhaps if it's people who are older who are perhaps still more concerned about the virus,
Anthony?
we shall see. It's also,
or if rich people just aren't in London, you know, it could be that.
Position closed on Canadian dollar. Profit £200.
Tourists aren't here, and yes, people are nervous. Some older people. I was actually going for lunch tomorrow with 2 people even older than me, and they've pulled out. Just decided it's not worth it yet.
Ancient Richard, then, clearly absolutely ancient. But look, it's been obviously really a terrible time for chefs and restaurants. So, I mean, you've spoken to some already who are kind of a bit trepidatious about the bookings, but what are the prospects then for the business side of things? I mean, we've already seen a lot of the kind of family-style firms, you know, going under in the UK.
It's a nightmare for the restaurant. Some of the big names have already gone, places like the Caprice, the Greenhouse, 2 Michelin stars, the Ledbury, 2 Michelin stars. Restaurants are opening into a recession with heavy debts that have built up during lockdown when they've had no income. And in particular, the problem is rent bills they're facing. And they're having to open with reduced capacity, because not just because of a drop in demand, but because of social distancing. So places are opening 60-70% capacity, with huge bills they're facing. So it's a really uncertain prospect. I think the shakeout is, I mean, I hate to be pessimistic, but it's hardly begun, because as long as the furlough scheme for restaurant employees has been operating, restaurants have just kept going. But when they have to start paying all the staff wages, then I think that's when a lot of people are going to be let go, unfortunately.
I haven't understood throughout this whole crisis why they... You know, if the government tells you as a business owner, you have to close, you are not allowed to make any money throughout this period, why wouldn't the government say the same thing to landlords? I mean, if I'm not allowed to bring in any revenue, then neither should the business owner who happens to run the business of real estate.
No, that's sorry to interrupt, but that's a very good point. The restaurateurs it's just ridiculous. They don't have the money, and some of them, I was speaking to one restaurateur she's got a personal guarantee on her property. She's facing losing that as well.
Gosh.
They've had zero income. They're going to be opening. They're going to be making a loss in the opening months and facing these huge bills that a lot of them can't pay. I wish the government had done more.
Well, I do wonder what Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, is going to say next week. I mean, we had Kate Nichols on from the UK Hospitality just this morning, and she had a whole long laundry list of what she wanted the Chancellor to do to try to help the industry. Richard, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
We didn't get his favourite gastropub. Richard, I know you don't like pubs. You're not a pub man, but you're not like a local boozer. But what about gastros?
Howard Arms.
The Howard Arms.
Howard Arms. I think he's got a Michelin star. It's not your pub down the road, unfortunately.
Got a Michelin star, of course. Richard, great talking to you, man. Thanks so much for joining us. Richard Vines is our chief food critic here at Bloomberg.
Yeah, absolutely. Best job in the company, I suspect. Right, let's get over to Bloomberg's Roger Hearing, who's got all the latest in global news. Good morning.
Good morning, Caroline. Yes, you were talking about there the day before restaurants, hotels, cinemas and hairdressers are allowed to reopen in England. The Prime Minister is to warn people to act responsibly because the country is not out of the woods yet on the virus. Bloomberg's Sebastian Sarlik reports.
Boris Johnson's message today is intended to calm what ministers and police fear might be an overreaction on Super Saturday, with alcohol working against the need to maintain the need to keep social distancing. Johnson is expected to say success now depends on everyone acting responsibly. The Shadow Chancellor, Labour's Annalisa Dodds, is also speaking today.
In the meantime, we sold short a British pound at the price 124.656. So positions open for British pound short.
Arrested after he drove his motorcycle into officers, injuring several. The bike sported the slogan, "Liberate Hong Kong." He's due in court this afternoon. And in the last hour, the French Prime Minister, Edouard Philippe, has resigned. That's according to a statement from the Élysée Palace. It comes as President Emmanuel Macron is hoping to revamp his presidency, including a new top team. Macron wants to continue pushing for pension reform, which is controversial in France. Mexico has reported a record daily rise in confirmed COVID-19 cases. This comes a day after the country overtook Spain with the 6th deadliest outbreak in the world. Bloomberg's Jose Orozco says despite this rise in infections, lockdown is easing.
Deaths from the virus reached 28,510. The country is likely to overtake France sometime this week. Even as deaths surge, Mexico City businesses began reopening this week based on government data showing a drop in hospital occupancy. In Mexico City, Jose Orozco, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
The China sanctions bill has passed the US Congress. It now heads to President Donald Trump for approval. The legislation would impose sanctions on Chinese officials who crack down on dissent in Hong Kong. The House and Senate moved quickly to pass the legislation after Beijing imposed a new national security law in the city. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Roger Hearing. This is Bloomberg. Caroline.
Thank you so much, Roger. Now, in terms of what we're going to bring to you in the next part of the programme, case closed. German lawmakers have ended the nation's legal standoff with the European Central Bank. Of course, they voted to accept the QE measures taken were proportionate.
Imagine if they hadn't.
Yeah, that would have been...
This is one of those cases when the news would really be if they hadn't.
Yes.
That would be the surprise, right?
And it's for the last QE measures, right? Not for this.
Yes.
Program,
yes, that's correct. It's for the last quantitative ease, the previous quantitative easing measures. And many Germans are still very much against it. You know, Germans have, I think it's fair to say, this general feeling that they're working very hard and paying a lot of money in taxes for others to not to work quite as hard. That's not really, I think, necessarily the case. That's just the feeling that has not been backed up by the Bundestag.
When you went car shopping, you meant business. You aced vehicle history searches and test drives. You out-salesman to the salesman. Now you've got your wheels. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll have the info you need to get more for your future. Go to aceyourretirement.org, because when it comes to speeding past financial challenges, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Bill Hageman, Withum's proud managing partner and CEO. We recognize this disruptive time is unsettling. For the past 45 years, Withum has been committed to helping our clients, our people, and our communities to be in a position of strength with innovative business advisory, tax, and assurance solutions.
I'm placing a new order to buy euro at 112.363.
Former senior partner with Deloitte & Touche and past JCF president, discusses the advantages of a donor-advised fund over a private foundation.
There's a lot involved in having a private foundation. You need to engage attorneys, you need to engage accountants, file tax returns. At JCF, all of that is done for you. You don't have to get involved in anything other than making your contribution to your fund and then determining which grants that you want to make.
A JCF fund may be opened with a minimum $5,000 contribution of cash or appreciated securities and can be used as an alternative to or together with a private foundation.
If you have a foundation, you have to list all of the contributions that you made. Potentially anybody, because the information is public, can find out exactly which organizations a foundation has made charitable contributions to.
Let JCF simplify your philanthropy and protect your privacy. Learn more about JCF's private client group at jcfny.org.
Imagine being denied an appointment.
For the friendships, for the fresh air, for the space to grow, for the knowledge, for the sport, for the outdoor education, for the wide horizons, for the academic excellence, for the future. Unleash your child's education at West Buckland School. a co-educational day and boarding school in beautiful North Devon. If you're moving to the southwest for a better quality of life, this is education without compromise in what the Good Schools Guide called a gem of a school in an exceptional location. To see for yourself, find us at westbuckland.com.
Hey, I'm Robin, one of the tech experts here to help you at Curry's PC World. I'm not just a voice on the radio. You can now come into your local store and talk tech with a human being like me. Just the news you needed this morning. We've put all the right measures in place to help you again safely in your local Staples Corner store. The tech experts are back in town, so come in and see if that fridge can hold enough for your hungry household. And welcome back to your local Curry's PC World.
With the shift to remote working, video conferencing has become the new normal to keep your business running. But is it reliable and secure? Cisco WebEx is committed to the highest security standards and already trusted by both small businesses and many of the world's largest organizations. Call, message and meet securely with Cisco WebEx. Sign up at cisco.uk/workfromhome.
Short position open on euro at 1.12.363. So we sold short euro pair for 1.12.363.
Does, but at Honda, we listen to our dreams. We get right up close, and on really good days, they become reality. From 2022, Honda's mainstream cars will only be hybrid or electric. Honda, the power of dreams.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. Why not book an MOT to get you safely back on the road? With over 600,000 carried out every year at 350 garages, you can always count on our experts. And get back to visiting those you've missed the most. Hi, Mum. From a safe distance, of course. From MOTs to battery replacements and tyre fittings, there's no job too big or too small.
Sorry, correction. Euro USD was long, buy. So it wasn't short, it was buy. So Euro USD we bought for 112.363. Okay, long position.
When you spend over £30 with the code LON530. So, get your job started at toolstation.com. Terms and conditions apply.
Give yourself a Diet Coke break.
When the world stopped, people in our local communities didn't. At the Co-op, we want to say thank you to all the local heroes. Daksha wanted to help the NHS, so she and her husband Parish cooked 50 meals for a hospital in Harrow. But they didn't stop there. They've set up the Community Response Kitchen, delivering to hospitals, schools and homeless shelters across London. Now they're delivering between 1,000 and 3,000 meals every day. And they've achieved all this with no funding, just the support of local businesses and local people. To Daksha and Parish and all the local heroes that keep our communities going, the Co-op says thank you.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and at Bloomberg QuickTake. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg's European headquarters in London, I'm Danny Berger with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. Now, we're looking at equities having a fizzle out really to end this week. European equities have been fluctuating for most of the day. At the moment, they're down 0.1%. They had seen slight gains earlier, but they've given that up. Leading the way down are banks in Europe. That sector is down 1.1%. Rallying today, though, we're looking at technology firms, mostly those in Germany and the UK, are are able to post gains up 0.7%. In terms of regions today, one of the more weak ones is the IBEX, Spain, posting losses today of 0.7%. Meanwhile, the FTSE down 0.4%. Similar story for the CAC 40. DAX, though, little change, just up 4 basis points. Now, the U.S. is closed for the Independence Day holiday, so that means cash markets are closed, which might be some of the reason we don't have too much direction today with volumes lower, but futures are open. We're looking at the S&P 500 futures down just 1 basis point, so essentially flat on the day, though the NASDAQ is still pushing higher in terms of their futures. That comes after a record-breaking close where the NASDAQ hit a record high versus the S&P 500. Now, in currencies, dollar also flat. Again, I think it's the same U.S. story. People off for the holidays, so not a ton of volume there. Down 3 basis points, trading at 12.14. That's the Bloomberg dollar spot. Meanwhile, we're looking at sterling trading lower, down about 0.1%, trading at 1.24. Euro dollar basically unchanged, though I will say the euro has been very strong as of late. Just finished one of its strongest 2-month runs against the dollar, so we'll see if that can continue after today's weakness. In bonds, again, no direction from the Treasury market with the U.S. cash market closed. We're looking at most yields falling, though less than 1 basis point. The only really standout here are BTPs trading at 1.19, which will put them at the lowest level since March. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Roger Herring on more what's going on around the world. Roger.
Thanks, Danny. Yes, Brexit negotiators appear to be homing in on a broad agreement. That's despite talks this week ending a day earlier than planned. Officials told us the two teams...
Stop on profit for British pound on 124.636. So stop on profit. If it will reach this level and the pair will be executed, we will have profit £200. Okay.
as well. That's after the government published the rules that companies must follow to deploy the electric vehicles. Large-scale trials can start at the weekend and they'll last for a year. The government will closely monitor activity and public feedback with a view to fully legalising scooters in the future. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Roger Hearing. This is Bloomberg. Caroline.
Thank you so much, Roger. You know, on e-scooters, most of London, there is a maximum speed limit of 20 miles per hour. Matt, I've told you this before. Do you know the top speed of one of those e-scooters?
30 kilometers an hour here in Germany.
30 miles an hour, apparently.
Kilometers, 30 kilometers an hour.
I think so, and yeah.
No.
It's fast.
Yes, it is, but I think it maintains, if your limit is 20 miles per hour, e-scooters will do just under that. I
thought there was some that go up to 30 miles per hour.
Well, an e-scooter can, of course, do that, but the rentals are typically limited in top speed. I'm a huge fan. I cannot believe that you haven't got those in the UK yet. I started using them about a year ago. I had been skeptical because the kids park them all over the place on the street, and are very irresponsible and run in. But so I was against them, but I had to start using them at a Frankfurt financial conference I went to, and I realized not only do you reduce your carbon footprint significantly, you get to your destination so much faster than you would in a taxi, and in a much better mood. I mean, it just brightens up your day. It makes you feel like a kid again. And I realized I started taking them every chance I could get and taking longer routes and stopping by fun little stores. And I just absolutely love the e-scooters.
Oh, I mean, maybe I'm a downer on this. I should try one.
Wait till you try one.
Yeah, I will try one. Yeah. And then, but I guess I do worry about the number of, people who get into accidents on the roads just because there are so many users on that. I know.
You know what? People get into accidents.
Yeah, that's true.
That happens. I got hit by a truck one time.
I know. Sadly for you.
It's
anyway,
okay.
Yeah.
What doesn't kill you, makes you stronger.
Makes you stronger. Right, let's talk a bit about, I wonder whether Marcus Ashworth, our Bloomberg Opinion columnist, is going to venture out on an e-scooter. Let's talk a bit about what's been going on in the markets then. We mentioned earlier in the programme German lawmakers ending the legal sort of standoff between the ECB and about the bond buying programme with the German court ruling that came down a couple of months ago. There was really a broad alliance to vote that voted in favour of backing the programme. It was obviously seen as key to propping up the euro area economy. Having said that, the markets didn't react that significantly. Some saw some reaction in terms of the bank stocks this morning. Bloomberg Opinion columnist Marcus Ashworth, what did you think? It would have been bigger news had anything else happened, right?
Yeah, that wasn't really much of a revelation. We all knew this was going to be a classic cover-up.
We closed position on British pound, £200 profit. The position closed at 124.636.
Program. Bear in mind that this was just purely about the existing asset purchase program. So we knew that they weren't going to go in a much miles bigger one, then by definition this was going to get swept under the carpet and nothing to see here, please move on. And that's essentially exactly what happened. But it's interesting to see how Germany as a whole is reacting at the moment to Europe, and it does not want to be the problem here. It clearly was embarrassed that it had to sort this out, and it's just swept it out of the carpet, under the carpet, and it's a non-issue now.
Well, Merkel, I mean, Germany was a country that didn't want to spend money. Olaf Scholz was steadfastly, even though he's in the SPD, against it. The last 3 times I interviewed him, and now Merkel has come out full force behind. And by the way, shared debt was another thing. I've interviewed Schäuble and Scholz about this, and both of them were like, please, why do journalists continue to bring that up? It's never, ever, ever going to happen, is what they would tell me. And now, Merkel's pushing for it.
Yeah, it's part of the whole new realization that, well, not just for her legacy, but obviously her presidency now for the next 6 months. It's all they've got to sort a number of things. They've got to get the multi-financial framework done to the next 7 years budgets. They've got to get the recovery funds through. Clearly, the frugal four are trying delaying tactics because the longer they can drag this process out, possibly the less of a need for as much as 750 billion is their sort of logic, I would imagine. So the Germans are keen to get it done to show the world really that the European unity is a proper thing and that they can finally come together and issue what is a baby step towards full mutualised debt. And I think it's the simplest way is always the best, and issuing it under the Commission, under the European Union with already an existing issuer makes so much sense. The market will absolutely love it. They can sell this debt super easy because it's equivalent to sort of German quality security, but more of a yield. And I think that's a great thing for European unity. And I think Germany finally gets it under Merkel now, and about time too, eh?
Yeah, although she talked this morning about how the EU Recovery Fund negotiations are quite rocky. She was talking to parliamentarians.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, exactly. So what about then, I'll end on Ray Dalio, talking about that markets basically are dominated, controlled by central banks.
No longer free. Actually, Steen Jacobsen told us the same thing yesterday.
Yeah, no,
you finally worked this out.
Yeah. Well, it's more the question about how you hand back control of market pricing. I mean, everybody knows what Ray Dalio said, or is probably true, but it's about how that unwinds, or if it ever does. It's a big question, Marcus. No?
There is no way out, which could capture forever. Look, the Fed tried their best to taper and reduce their balance sheet. Didn't work. And I think, we've got the Bank of England at the moment trying its best to sort of... Yeah. There'll be no more, but the brutal reality is we know it's going to be extremely hard to extricate from this because the markets are constantly, requiring more of us and more support. And the central banks, their job is to reduce volatility. That's what they're there to do, which is the best way you can do that is ever more clever yield curve control or talk of negative rates, all this sort of jaw stuff. But at the end of the day, you can halt your buying of QE at some point, pause it, and you might, if you're very lucky, let it run off of its own accord. times.
What a depressing note to end the interview on.
Let's get back to e-scooters. I've got one.
Have you got one?
I have one, yes. My son bought it to us for Christmas. And
how fast does it go? Come on, tell us.
Well, I was going to say, it totally depends on your weight. As I am a larger individual, it doesn't go anywhere near 20 miles per hour.
Oh, interesting.
But something else, my children go a bit faster than I do.
And a lot of fun. Marcus, thanks so much for joining us. Marcus Ashworth there, Bloomberg opinion columnist. Caroline, have a great weekend. This is Bloomberg.
A social distancing tip.
Hey, I'm Robin, one of the tech experts, here to help you at Curry's PC World. I'm not just a voice on the radio. You can now come into your local store and talk tech with a human being like me. Just the news you needed this morning. We've put all the right measures in place to help you again safely in your local Staples Corner store. The tech experts are back in town. So come in and see if that fridge can hold enough for your hungry household. And welcome back to your local Curry's PC World.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Friday morning by the scruff of the neck. Take this sunshine as an omen and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
In line with government guidelines, face coverings are now compulsory on public transport. At Asda, you can get a 4-pack of Prima disposable face coverings for £2.80, or a 2-pack of washable face coverings from £2.50. Asda, we're all in this together. Selected stores subject to availability.
.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is Bloomberg Radio. We have to get it right the first time.
We always talk about the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Fast order. Prime Minister resigns. I'm Elliot Francis. In Texas, Governor Greg Abbott has ordered that face coverings must be worn in public across most of the state. Meanwhile, other states are also dealing with surging cases of the COVID-19 virus. Correspondent Nick Watch reports.
Record death tolls in Arizona and the biggest testing site in the state struggling to cope. That's now a nationwide fear. In California, they say 1 in 140 Angelinos are now infected. California, one of 23 states now pausing or rolling back reopening, but Florida's pushing forward despite more than 10,000 new cases today. A record.
France is set to name a new prime minister sometime later today. All this after Edouard Philippe announced his resignation in the middle of an expected reshuffle in the government. President Emmanuel Macron is said to be seeking to open a new chapter for the 2 remaining years of his term. It'll focus on efforts to relaunch the French economy, deeply hit by the pandemic crisis. Shortly after the announcement, Macron praised Philippe's outstanding work in the past 3 years. A former GOP presidential candidate, Herman Cain, is receiving treatment for COVID-19 at a hospital in Atlanta this morning. Cain was last seen at President Trump's rally in Tulsa. Correspondent Jeremy Diamond.
Cain was taken to the hospital after he was experiencing trouble breathing. We don't have a status update on his condition since then, but obviously notable that he attended this campaign rally less than 2 weeks ago and apparently tested positive for the virus 9 days after attending. That's certainly within the window where he could have contracted the virus while attending that rally, although of course we do not know that as of yet.
A top federal prosecutor in Brooklyn is leaving his post for a job at the Justice Department. U.S. Attorney Richard Donahue told his staff Thursday that he'll become the top deputy to Deputy Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen. I'm Elliot Francis.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, U.S. Tax Shield can help you take back control. The IRS can seize your bank accots, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Our team of tax attorneys can stop collections and get you protected. U.S. Tax Shield offers a price protection guaranteed quote to get you protected today. U.S. Tax Shield is A+ rated with the BBB, so call 800-466-9625. U.S. Tax Shield, 800-466-9625.
Attention all authors. Page Publishing is looking for authors. Have you written a book and want to get it published? Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, Apple iTunes, and other outlets. They handle all aspects of the publishing process for you. Printing, cover art, publicity, copyright, and editing. Call 800-501-3689 now for your free author submission kit. That's 800-501-3689 for your free author submission kit. Again, 800-501-3689.
Legendary broadcaster Hugh Downs, whose congeniality and authoritative manner allowed him to move between the world of game shows and network news, has died. Jeff McKay looks back.
Hugh Downs spent more than 60 years in our living rooms on radio and television. Downs hosted the game show Concentration and the ABC News Show 2020.
Good evening, I'm Hugh Downs, and this is 2020.
Downs' broadcasting career began at age 18 when he auditioned for a radio announcer job on a whim in his hometown of Lima, Ohio. After serving in the Army in World War II, Downs became a legend in broadcasting, his work ranging from Today, NBC's morning news show, to Tonight, working with Jack Parr. An Emmy Award-winning broadcaster and book writer, Downs passed away at his Scottsdale, Arizona home. He was 99. I'm Jeff McKay.
Fans can attend the French Open, which is delayed until late September. However, French Tennis Federation says only 60% of the stands can be filled. I'm Elliot Francis.
And I'm John Metaxas from the Bloomberg Newsroom. U.S. financial markets are closed on this Friday, July 3rd, for the official observance of the 4th of July, but U.S. stock futures are trading modestly higher. European markets are flat. Stocks in Hong Kong are up more than 1%. Japanese stocks up less than 1%. Global stocks are poised to cap their best week in a month as improving economic data are weighed against an acceleration of COVID infections in the U.S. Crude oil traded lower today. The dollar is flat, headed for a weekly drop. It's first in 4 weeks. Gold is on course for a fourth week of gains, sitting just below $1,800 an ounce. The yield on 10-year treasuries ended Thursday down 1 basis point at 0.67%. Manufacturing gauges from the U.S. and China offered encouraging signs this week. The U.S. labor market made greater progress than expected last month, digging out of a deep hole, yet optimism over the rebound was tempered by stubbornly high layoffs. American Airlines says it will have over 20,000 more employees than it needs to operate a deeply reduced flying schedule as travel demand slowly rebuilds amid the coronavirus pandemic. We get the story from Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
John, the airline's top executives say the estimate represents about 20 to 30% of Americans' expected workforce later this year. They say not all would necessarily be furloughed after September 30th, however, because the carrier is continuing efforts to trim jobs through leave, early retirement, and voluntary separation programs. Americans' sobering outlook illustrates the depth of the airline industry's challenge to recover from the worst ever collapse in travel demand. Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Radio.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Metaxas. This is Bloomberg.
Thank you so much for joining us for this holiday edition of Bloomberg Daybreak. I'm Nathan Hager, and the stock market is closed for the 4th of July holiday weekend. Over the next hour, we'll look at what's ahead for the market in the second half with Jim Paulson, Chief Investment Officer at Leuthold Whedon Capital Management. We'll also focus on the tech sector with Gene Munster, co-founder of Loop Ventures. First, let's take a closer look at the June jobs report. Mark Vidner is with us now, senior economist at Wells Fargo Securities. So obviously a beat on the top line numbers here, Mark, with 4.8 million payrolls added in June, much bigger number than expected. At the same time, weekly jobless claims are elevated. What are your key takeaways?
Well, first off, the employment number was pretty solid. I mean, we saw 75% of the covered industries added jobs during the month of June. And the biggest bounce backs were the places that we saw the biggest cutbacks. So it was restaurants. It was auto assembly plants. It was personal services, retailers, doctors and dentist offices. And I guess if there's some good news to take away from that, in addition to the stronger numbers, it's that as much of a bounce back as we've seen, there's still more room to improve. I mean, we haven't gotten anywhere close to where we started. The jobless claims numbers, on the other hand, suggest that the rate of improvement is likely to slow, and that should be apparent when we get the July numbers a month from now.
Does that relieve some of the pressure, or does it even put more pressure on congressional lawmakers to act when it comes to enacting further fiscal stimulus, adding to the enhanced unemployment benefits?
I think it complicates the process a little bit. I think that most folks know that they have to be looking forward instead of looking at where we've been. And we're going to need more fiscal stimulus. So the timing is a little trickier this year because we've got an election coming up in November. And when we get to Labor Day, everything political basically stops because they're in full campaign mode. So they really need to do something this summer. There's no question the economy is slowing. I think that the FOMC minutes that we saw from the June meeting showed that there was an awful lot of concern about the rise in infections that we were seeing in the Sun Belt. And that's gotten a whole lot worse since the Fed met.
Speak a little bit more about what this report could mean in terms of the difficulty of the recovery. We've seen, of course, the coronavirus surging in the South and the West, and a number of states and businesses dialing back their reopenings. How could that play out in the labor market going forward?
Well, I think this could play out in a couple of ways that would be very disruptive. And I think the most worrisome is that a number of businesses were counting on reopening at some point this summer. There was a thought that the spread of the virus would slow during the summer months with the heat and more people outside and increased humidity in large parts of the country. And that just hasn't come to pass. I mean, we've seen the exact opposite. And I think that one of the outcomes of that is that we're going to see a number of businesses are going to close down, and we've already begun to see that. And with that rise in permanent closures, you're going to see job losses, and you're also going to see an uptick in credit losses.
How difficult is it going to be for those people who have lost their jobs through this and could potentially face further job loss to find some other line of work as this artificial recession moves forward?
Well, it's going to be difficult. I mean, typically restaurants are always struggling to find workers, and so where we were previously was somewhere past full employment, and I don't think it's reasonable to expect us to get back there anytime soon. But right now, I think it's awfully hard to find good-paying jobs in the hospitality industry because the business just isn't there. And even before we saw this renewed mandates that people roll back the indoor dining and put off opening bars, it was very hard for a lot of restaurants and bars to make money in the current environment. But with obeying the social distancing guidelines, they just simply couldn't. There just simply wasn't enough business for them to be profitable.
What are you seeing in the unemployment rate in terms of whether it's accurately depicting how many people are still out of work at this point?
I think it's reasonably accurate. One thing that we miss in the unemployment figures, though, is that we have an awful lot of small businesses that are sole proprietorships that have shut down. And for those sole proprietorships, I mean, they don't show up necessarily they don't show up in the unemployment statistics. But ironically, with the improved eligibility for unemployment insurance, they've shown up in the unemployment statistics, the pandemic unemployment assistance. Were able to qualify for that. So that's one of the reasons why we've had this disconnect between unemployment claims and the unemployment rate, is that small business owners, if you're a sole proprietor and your businesses have to shut down, you are eligible to file for unemployment insurance, but you may not show up in the unemployment statistics.
So our last minute here, where do you see the trajectory going in terms of recovery for the labor market?
I think we're going to see the rate of job growth is going to slow, and I would not be surprised if at some point this summer or in the fall that we see a little bit of a setback in the jobs numbers, and maybe we see a decline. Nothing on the order of what we saw in April or maybe even in March. But I think that the virus is dictating the pace of the recovery, and right now the virus has resurged in a way that economic activity is almost certain to pull back. If not by mandate, I think that businesses and consumers will probably pull back on their own enough that it will cause the rate of improvement in employment to slow somewhat.
Mark Vidner, senior economist at Wells Fargo, thank you as always for your insights. Really appreciate it. And up next on this holiday edition of Bloomberg Daybreak, we'll see what's in store for the stock market the rest of the year with Jim Paulson, Chief Investment Officer at Leuthold Whedon Capital Management. It is 13 minutes past the hour, and this is Bloomberg.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Companies looking to make money from autonomous vehicles have mainly focused on making deliveries to homes or providing ride-hailing services. But Bloomberg senior writer Kyle Stock says a startup called Gatik concentrates on moving groceries from point to point in the so-called middle mile.
From a large distribution center to a smaller distribution center or a store where customers can pick up at the curb.
Before products are put on board, humans make sure the vehicles can navigate the static routes.
They'll drive the route for 4 to 6 weeks, and they map the roads, the tricky spots, and then from there they can make choices. They can make sure these vehicles always drive in the slow lane, that they only take right turns.
Walmart has signed on as one of Gatik's first customers. Gatik says it's profitable now, even though it still puts a safety driver in every vehicle.
At some point, that person will come out, and the economics will improve.
Jeff Bellinger, Bloomberg Radio.
Asset managers who...
For the friendships, for the fresh air, for the space to grow, for the knowledge, for the sport, for the outdoor education, for the wide horizons, for the academic excellence, for the future. Unleash your child's education at West Buckland School, a co-educational day and boarding school in beautiful North Devon. If you're moving to the southwest for a better quality of life, this is education without compromise in what the Good Schools Guide called a gem of a school in an exceptional location. To see for yourself, find us at westbuckland.com.
Hey, I'm Robin, one of the tech experts here to help you at Corrie's PC World. I'm not just a voice on the radio. You can now come into your local store and talk tech with a human being like me. Just the news you needed this morning. We've put all the right measures in place to help you again safely in your local Staples Corner store. The tech experts are back in town, so come in and talk laptops and washing machines or fridges and TVs. And welcome back to your local Corrie's PC World.
In line with government guidelines, face coverings are now compulsory on public transport. At Asda, you can get a 4-pack of Prima disposable face coverings for £2.80. Or a 2-pack of washable face coverings from £2.50. Asda, we're all in this together. Selected stores subject to availability.
How do we control coronavirus now? Listen to Claudia. She's a care worker.
I got the call from NHS Test and Trace. Told I'd been in contact with someone with coronavirus. Couldn't believe it. I had to isolate at home for 14 days. Couldn't go to work, couldn't go to the shops, couldn't get out to exercise. I didn't even feel ill. But do you know what? To protect my family, my friends, my community, well, Well, you just do it, don't you?
Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
Special Independence Day edition of Bloomberg Daybreak. I'm Nathan Hager. We're now going to turn our focus to the stock market, and to say it was a volatile first half may have been an understatement with the world hit with the coronavirus. For more, let's welcome in Jim Paulson, Chief Investment Officer at Leuthold Whedon Capital Management. Roller coaster ride might be a good way to describe it, Jim. The dramatic clawback in the second quarter from the March 23rd low. Do you see the upswing continuing?
You know, Nathan, I do. I don't think it's going to be quite as dramatic as you pointed out, the volatility that we've seen in the first half. This is what I've referred to as a crisis at warp speed, both on the downside. It fell, 34% in 23 trading days. That was about 7 times faster than the average of the previous 13 bear markets, and now it's recovered almost at record speed as well. I think that's going to slow down, but I think it's going to trend higher because I just really think the economy reopening is going to continue. It might continue at a faster pace or a slower pace depending on the virus, but I think it's going to continue, and that tells me that we're in a new economic expansion, and we're probably in a fresh bull market, and we're early in this thing with an unemployment rate still in double digits. We've got room to improve the economy in the next few years, and I think that means room to improve the stock market.
You know, it's interesting given how quickly we've recovered from that March 23rd low. There's been some debate about whether the bull market actually ended. I mean, what's your view on that? Is this a nascent bull market, or are we still in the middle of the clawback from the Great Recession of 2008?
I get your point. I think it's well taken in some sense where we are right now, within striking distance of where we were at year end and old highs. It's almost like we just had a nasty correction more than a complete bear market. But what does make this, to me, a new bull market is that we definitely had a recession. The crisis created a recession, and when you create double-digit excess unemployment in the economy, and the amount of downdraft that we had in business operations across the spectrum, even though it was brief, that tells me what makes a new bull market is the capability to grow the economy at above normal rates for a period because you have so much excess capacity in the economy. And we certainly have that today. We got excess retail space, excess commercial space, excess job or labor supply, and that tells me we can grow faster than normal for a period, and that's the essence of a new bull market.
And of course, a big difference between past recessions and this one is that it was a forced shutdown caused by a pandemic. I mean, what does that determine? What difference does that make in terms of how we could recover from this?
Yeah, it's what I refer to. It's the only recession by proclamation that we've ever had. We just proclaimed we're going to have a recession, and I think that's why it fell so fast, is because there was no debate about whether we were going to have a recession. We knew it as soon as our leaders announced we were going to hit the off switch. And so rather than go through all the normal bear market foreplay where you debate whether slower reports is a recession or just a slowdown, everyone went right to the end right away. And then when we announced we were going to turn it back on, we came right back. So I do think that's why we've had this.
Okay, I open in position short for Japanese yen at 107.485. Okay, order placed to sell short at 107.485 Japanese yen.
Confidence among consumers and businesses, strong balance sheets in the private sector. And I think that still matters. One of the things that's going to help us, most recessions come about because there's vulnerabilities and there's too many parts of the economy that are out over their skis, and you truly have to have a liquidation just to improve things. We don't really have to have that. And so if we are recovering, some of that previous strength might allow us to get back quicker than maybe most people currently think.
But you sort of point out two things there. There was a strong economy before the pandemic, but afterwards you're calling for a long slog toward a full recovery. So how do you position as an investor with that kind of dichotomy in mind?
And position opened short on Japanese yen at 107.485.
For example, in the 1980s, the agricultural sector, the energy sector, really never did return to normal, neither one of them. Commercial real estate crisis in 1990, it took till 1995 before commercial industrial loans got back to a new high. There's parts of the economy since 2008 that still haven't recovered. The banking industry has never been the same. So we might find that it takes a couple, 3 years to get transportation, air transportation back, or those kind of things. And there may be parts of the economy that never do come back. It's going to take a long time to get the unemployment rate down. But the reality is, doesn't matter for stocks. Stocks are going to, if we're in a new expansion, stocks are going to continue to go higher. They took off in 82 and were much higher right away, even though we still had very high unemployment all the way to the latter part of that decade. Same thing in 08. We went on to new highs in the stock market long before the unemployment rate came back to normal. So I don't think those are inconsistent. It's very common to have a stock market that goes to new highs long before the economy returns to normal.
And to your point, a lot of what's been driving the rally since the March 23rd low has been all the liquidity in the system, with the Federal Reserve acting as a backstop with all these facilities it's put into place and the promise of fiscal support. I wonder if that's creating a scenario where we could see a bubble in assets.
It's very possible. I mean, I think that's a down-the-road problem, but it's a problem, I think. We've got a powerful combination for risk assets right now. We've got a lot of fear and caution out there. And as a result, that reflects in things like almost $5 trillion sitting in money market mutual funds, an all-time record high. Just a lot of dry powder that could be converted back into the equity market.
Jim Paulson is Chief Investment Officer at Leuthold Whedon Capital Management. Up next, tech stocks in focus when we speak with Loop Ventures co-founder Gene Munster. It's 25 minutes past the hour. I'm Nathan Hager, and this is Bloomberg.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
People love a good story. They like it even better.
Hey, I'm Robin, one of the tech experts here to help you at Curry's PC World. I'm not just a voice on the radio. You can now come into your local store and talk tech with a human being like me. Just the news you needed this morning. We've put all the right measures in place to help you again safely in your local Staples Corner store. The tech experts are back in town. So come in and see if that fridge can hold enough for your hungry household. And welcome back to your local Curry's PC World.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Friday morning by the scruff of the neck. Take this sunshine as an omen and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. We can replace your battery at over 700 stores and garages, or even at your home or work with our mobile experts, so you can enjoy an engine that starts first time, every time, and start enjoying the open road again.
Are we nearly there yet?
From battery replacements to tyre fittings to MOTs, there really is no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
In line with government guidelines, face coverings are now compulsory on public transport. At Asda, you can get a 4-pack of Prima disposable face coverings for £2.80, or a 2-pack of washable face coverings from £2.50. Asda, we're all in this together. Selected stores subject to availability.
London. Toolstation are here to help get your job safely started and finished, with over 60 branches within the M25. All open with social distancing and contactless click and collect from 5 minutes. And with 20,000 top trade quality products to choose from. Order online now for collection in London branches and get £5 off when you spend over £30 with the code LON530. So, get your job started at toolstation.com. Terms and conditions apply.
How do we control coronavirus now? Listen to Claudia. She's a care worker.
I got the call from NHS Test and Trace. Told I'd been in contact with someone with coronavirus. Couldn't believe it. I had to isolate at home for 14 days. Couldn't go to work, couldn't go to the shops, couldn't get out to exercise. I didn't even feel ill. But you know what? To protect my family, my friends, my community, well, you just do it, don't you?
Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
Americans celebrate Independence Day this weekend, but the unwelcomed pandemic has put the nation in crisis mode.
Americans are advised to be extra cautious this 4th of July.
I hope we don't have a reprise of what happened on Memorial Day, with lots of people out there carefree rather than careful.
CDC advisor Dr. William Schaffner says if you socialize this weekend, wash your hands, maintain distance, and wear a mask.
I want everybody to have a good time. Carefully, prudently, please.
I'm John Lawrence.
A new French prime minister will be appointed to replace Edouard Philippe, who resigned. President Macron seeking to open a new chapter for the 2 remaining years of his term. Markets advanced in Asia today following a Wall Street rally driven by strong jobs data. The Dow gained 0.4%. U.S. markets are closed today in observance of Independence Day. I'm John Trout.
And I'm John Metaxas from the Bloomberg Newsroom. U.S. stock futures are slightly higher this morning on a day when U.S. financial markets are closed for the official observance of the 4th of July. European indices are flat after gains in Hong Kong and Japan. The MSCI All-Country World Index is headed for an advance of more than 3% on the week as markets weigh improving financial data against the spread of the coronavirus. Texas ordered residents to wear masks, reversing course as it reported its second most daily infections of the outbreak, while Florida's largest county, Miami-Dade, will impose a curfew. Anthony Fauci, the director of the National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Diseases, says the virus is showing some signs of mutating in a way that may make it easier for the pathogen to spread. Gold is trading at $1,774 an ounce. Little change today. Bloomberg's Greg Jarrett reports on a battle for a precious metal playing out in a British court.
A London judge delivered a blow to Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro's attempt to retrieve $1 billion of gold in Bank of England vaults, ruling that opposition leader Juan Guaidó should be recognized as the country's interim president. Judge Nigel Tier says in deciding the ownership of the gold, the court should accept the UK government's unequivocal recognition of Guaidó. The bank sued the BOE to get the gold that it says it urgently needed in an effort to fight COVID-19. Greg Jarrett, Bloomberg Radio.
Recent central bank actions mean capital markets are no longer free, according to Bridgewater Associates' Ray Dalio, founder of the world's largest hedge fund. Dalio also said investors should favor stocks and gold over bonds and cash because the latter offer a negative rate of return and central banks will print more money. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Metaxas. This is Bloomberg.
Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Radio Plus app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
We're so glad you joined us for this holiday edition of Bloomberg Daybreak. The stock market is closed for the 4th of July holiday, and we're pleased to welcome our next guest, one of the top tech analysts on Wall Street, Gene Munster, co-founder of Loop Ventures. And Gene, when it comes to tech, I guess let's start with Tesla because it does seem to be the stock of the moment right now. Earlier this week, it finally passed Toyota to become the most valuable car company in the world on market cap. Do you see the rally continuing for Tesla?
I do, and ultimately there is a shift. I think that the move past Toyota's market cap is noteworthy because what it is recognition for, I think, the broader investing world that this is no longer an auto company. Long thought of that as an auto company. So if you shift the perspective that this is more of a tech company, and I would define a tech company as having sustained growth above 15% for the long term, separately margins in the operating margins in the 20 to 30% range. If we use that perspective, then the rally can continue. And I do caution that there's going to be some volatility to shares because it still is one that trades in part on emotion. But there's a larger framework that's in play just about the future of mobility, and Tesla has an advantage today. And I think that that advantage is going to largely remain for the next 5+ years. And I think that is the substance of why this can go higher, is that even though some of the competitors, it's not a car company, but even though some of the competitors are car makers, that they are structurally behind, and it will be difficult for them to catch up on some key components of what makes an electric car fundamental to the future.
All right. Well, if we start to think then about Tesla as a tech company more so than an automotive company, what do you see as the catalysts for growth for this company?
It's pretty straightforward, is that EVs are the future for automotive. An internal combustion engine is clumsy, inefficient, and an electric car, it just uses energy more efficiently and is easier for consumers. You don't have to maintenance as much. You don't have to go to filling stations. And so the cost of ownership for an electric car, even though the prices are higher, we've done a lot of work related to a Model 3 versus a Toyota Camry. And over a 5-year period, it's about 10% less to own a Model 3. And so I think that just the convenience factor of EVs, along with some of the cost savings over several years, I think is going to create this massive growth. And just to frame in like what is going on, this is really happening, is that the growth in overall automotive in the U.S. in the first quarter, so this is a little bit dated, this is the March data, was down, call it 30% for broader auto sales production in the U.S. And Tesla's deliveries were up about 40%, 40. And so when you see that gap, I think it is evidence that there is, in fact, a shift going on, and it's just a better value proposition for consumers. So that is what is driving this. And if you're going to kind of take it one step further, where can this go over the next decade, is that Tesla's going to produce somewhere between 400,000 and 500,000 cars this year globally. Call it 2/3 of them are in the U.S. But in 10 years, that number could be 12 to 15 million, and that would basically be as many cars as GM is making. And so this is they're just hitting an inflection curve in this demand for EVs.
Now, when we think about automated vehicles, the shift to that space, there's a lot of competition there, isn't there? So does Tesla just sort of have a first mover advantage in that space? I mean, talk a little bit about the competition it could be facing there.
So you'd think that the competition is, again, traditional auto, but it actually comes down to three fundamental pieces that make up an electric car. One is the battery. Second is the drivetrain. And the third is the autonomy piece, which is early today. There's some advanced autopilot, but full autonomy. The fit and finish, what the seats are like, the sound system, the look of the car, that is largely irrelevant when you think about the future. Any car company can do that. Tesla doesn't do a particular job of actually building the cars. They're doing a much better job today, but versus other automotive companies. But when you think about the substance of the future, the battery, the drivetrain, and the autonomy piece, those are things that are a structural advantage. And essentially, there's a catch-22 for traditional automotive. Right now, they are lagging in market share. Tesla has about 80% share in the U.S. EV market share.
All right, stay with us, Gene. I want to continue this conversation with Gene Munster, co-founder of Loop Ventures, and take a look at the tech sector more broadly, specifically what's ahead for Amazon and Apple. So stay with us for that. It's 39 minutes past the hour. I'm Nathan Hager, and this is Bloomberg.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's BABBEL.com.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology, makes innovation happen. NJIT faculty mentored Christoph Camacho when he was a student, helping him co-found a startup and patent a device that uses drone technology for reforestation and to collect valuable data for land management.
I founded Paratrees back in 2016, taking what I learned from my research at NJIT and migrating it to a startup. Our technology is to really enhance land management operations, so we work very closely with land management companies. So we have a drone that performs precision reforestation, and we do storm damage assessment, having access to drones that can collect data so it's much faster. And what is more important, we help them drive management decisions. NJIT has been there every step of the way, going full force with my company.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Visa is... Hey, I'm Robin, one of the tech experts here to help you at Curry's PC World. I'm not just a voice on the radio. You can now come into your local store and talk tech with a human being like me. Just the news you needed this morning. We've put all the right measures in place to help you again safely in your local Staples Corner store. The tech experts are back in town, so come in and see if that 55-inch TV is perfect for the return of sport. And welcome back to your local Curry's PC World.
Decisions, decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Friday morning by the scruff of the neck. Ignore this gloomy weather and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
How do we control coronavirus now? Listen to Claudia. She's a care worker.
I got the call from NHS Test and Trace. Told I'd been in contact with someone with coronavirus. Couldn't believe it. I had to isolate at home for 14 days. Couldn't go to work, couldn't go to the shops, couldn't get out to exercise. I didn't even feel ill. But you know what? To protect my family, my friends, my community, well, you just do it, don't you?
Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
Whether you're dreaming of a house the size of a football stadium or a football stadium in the back garden of your house, what you need is dream come true money. Luckily, tonight's Euro Millions Super Jackpot is a massive £110 million. Now that's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
It's been a while since we've all heard this sound. The sound of being free to move. We've missed you, road. Driving as we please may not be the easiest thing right now, but it couldn't be easier to drive away in a Volvo this weekend with 0% APR finance at the Volvo Select Approved Used Car event. For everyone's safety, your visit will need to be arranged in advance. Book your place at volvocars.co.uk.
Used vehicles up to 4 years old. Participating retailers. 50% deposit on minimum £7,000. Conditional sale. Terms, eligibility, guarantee requirements and conditions apply. Volvo Car Financial Services.
Ready to talk brass tacks on what's happening in Major League Baseball? Turn to the Effectively Wild podcast from Fangraphs for daily statistics, analysis, and commentary.
One team will say, yeah, we're going to keep paying minor leaguers their stipend, and another team will say, we're going to extend the stipend through this month, and then another team will say, nope, we're cutting them off. So are extending it at least through August, which would basically be the end of the minor league regular season.
Search Effectively Wild on TuneIn to listen.
Are you ready for the realest first-hand take of what's happening in the NBA? On their podcast, All the Smoke, former NBA players Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson bring their fiery intensity to the mic, dishing on the latest news and drama from on and off the court without boundaries.
Half man, half amazing. My friend, our brother, Vince Carter, man, welcome to the show.
Yo, what's up, man? What's up, my brother? Man,
Search All the Smoke on TuneIn to listen.
And breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is Bloomberg 1130. Now, a global news update. Now the news.
Millions of Americans celebrate Independence Day this weekend, but the unwelcomed pandemic has put the nation in crisis mode.
Americans are advised to be extra cautious this 4th of July.
I hope we don't have a reprise of what happened on Memorial Day, with lots of people out there carefree rather than careful.
CDC advisor Dr. William Schaffner says if you socialize this weekend, wash your hands, maintain distance, and wear a mask.
I want everybody to have a good time. Carefully, prudently, please.
I'm John Lawrence.
A new French prime minister will be appointed to replace Edouard Philippe, who resigned. President Macron seeking to open a new chapter for the 2 remaining years of his term. Markets advanced in Asia today following a Wall Street rally driven by strong jobs data. The Dow gained 0.4%. U.S. markets are closed today in observance of Independence Day. I'm John Trout.
Welcome back to the special Independence Day edition of Bloomberg Daybreak. I'm Nathan Hager. Let's continue our conversation now with Gene Munster, co-founder of Loop Ventures, as we look at what's ahead for the tech sector. Of course, it has been the outperformer in this ongoing crazy year we've seen so far, Gene, since the March 23rd bottom, certainly. Where do you see tech going, and what do you think has been driving the outperformance that we've seen so far?
I believe that tech is going to outperform the market because there's going to be a fracturing of the market and between the haves and the have-nots. And there's the high level of the haves are companies that are becoming an increasingly important part of our lives. The have-nots are companies that have been around us for a long time, but just are playing less important part of our lives. Those are pretty easy to distinguish. But the market more broadly, for people who are doing index investing, the market more broadly is a combination really of the haves and have-nots. Household names that are in the wrong place, plus some tech companies that are in the right place. And what you've seen with the kind of the resurgence of some of these tech names is the market is starting to recognize that. And I think what this ultimately means is that tech is going to outperform, but that doesn't mean that you own all tech at any price. You need to be judicious about what you're paying. And so I do believe that leadership will come from the next FANG that will evolve over the next few years. But that's the essence of why tech is outperforming today and why I think that it will continue to outperform in the years to come.
All right, let's look specifically at some of the biggest FANG names, starting with Amazon. Obviously, that has been a company of choice for people who have been forced to do a lot of their shopping from home during this pandemic. What's the outlook for Amazon as economies at least try to reopen? It's been an uneven reopening, obviously, but what's your view at this point?
So there's the company, the business, and then there's the stock. So we'll talk about the company. The outlook is as bright for Amazon for the obvious reasons around some of the infrastructure that they've built. It's not just about the concept of being at home and getting some of these things delivered to us. What allows that to happen, the selection, is something that is incredibly difficult to replicate. If you would give a group of people many billions of dollars and say, go after Amazon and replicate this, it would take a decade. That's everything from their drivers network to their fulfillment centers to the top of the funnel, the number of people that visit Amazon every day. And just when you think about buying something, you immediately go to Amazon. So what that means is that they will grab more and more of our wallet share. Today, surprisingly, online is only about 15%, 15% of total spending in the U.S. And that piece is going to grow. It won't grow to 100%, but maybe that ends up being 50 or 60%. Amazon's going to have their outsized piece of that. But then more importantly is they're going to start to get more into traditional brick and mortar. They've done that with other stores. They're doing it with some delivered to home concepts around brick and mortar with like Whole Foods coming to your home. And I think those pieces will just continue to accelerate what they're doing. They have this incredible view of a 10-year view. It is ultimately playing. I do want to add, it's worth adding, this story plays somewhere in between what price do you own Amazon at. It does trade at a rich multiple, and that's the piece that we struggle with. How much do you pay for shares of Amazon?
All right, so what's your outlook for the valuation?
My sense is there's going to be some better places to own. It's not that this is a bad stock to own. It's not that it's a great stock. I just think that there'll be more compelling names to own given its valuation. And yes, they're going to get economies of scale. Their profitability will increase over time. But I just think when you put it all together, great company, but maybe not a great stock over the next few years.
In terms of the company itself, Gene, where do you see some of the biggest growth factors for Amazon? Obviously, it's an e-commerce company. It's also a cloud company. It's also an advertising company. Where do you see the biggest sectors for growth?
The biggest sector is going to be doing more in brick and mortar. And they currently have about 50 relatively small brick and mortar locations outside of their Whole Foods network. But I think that they have a massive opportunity to really streamline brick and mortar. It is call it 85% of what's bought is bought people physically walking the stores today. That number will decrease, but Amazon isn't even really a player there. That's probably the biggest area of growth is what they can do. I see them really shaking up that. I predicted a few years ago that Amazon would buy Target. I've been incorrect on that. I stand by my view that brick and mortar is their biggest growth opportunity, and they will make big moves there in the years to come.
We're speaking with Gene Munster. He's co-founder of Loop Ventures, one of the biggest tech analysts on Wall Street. Let's talk a little bit more now about Apple, the other A in the FANG acronym. What's your outlook there? I mean, the company has also been grinding higher despite the pandemic.
I think this is your best place for upside over the next couple of years within kind of the traditional FANG, in part because there are areas that they're playing into, and also there's just this sense that it's kind of had its move, that it's hard to imagine Apple going higher given how big it is today, and I think that is misguided by investors. They're missing some of the fundamental truths about where this company is going, and those are multi-layered. In the near term, it's a steady business. In the intermediate term, the kind of the 2 to 5 years, they're going to have a significant upgrade cycle around 5G. It will be disappointing at first, 5G, but it will ultimately create what we think is a 3-year upgrade cycle. It will exceed the expectations. This is going to be probably the most exciting thing for consumers and their mobile experience over the last 10 years. I think this is noteworthy, and Apple will participate in that. And then there's the side of health and wellness. They have really running the table when it comes to wearables with Apple Watch. There's now, of course, an increased focus from consumers on health and wellness, and Apple Watch is a cost-efficient way to do that. Still nascent. Only 8% of iPhone owners use an Apple Watch, and that number could grow significantly higher, 30, 40, 50% over time. And so that's another growth driver. And then you layer on top of that what they're doing with services, and then the wild cards around could they do something in autonomy? Could they do even more creative things around healthcare beyond Apple Watch? I think when you put all that together, along with their management team, this story could be significantly higher. You can build a case that this is a $500 stock, and that would be a valuation in line with current valuations from other tech giants.
It's interesting that you focus on the health and wellness aspect of this company. Interesting that it comes at a time when so many of us are focused on health and wellness. Could that be a significant catalyst given where consumers' mindset is right now?
It is, and the way I think it plays out is you just have this steady high growth around specifically the watch for the next few years. It's a small part of their business today. It's 5% of revenue. It's growing. In the March quarter, the growth dipped because of everything that was going on, but it was, call it 25% growth, much higher than overall Apple's business growth, which is essentially flat. And so I think that this is going to be fundamental. What makes tech, the intersection of tech and wellness, is to take something that we use every day and make that into something that can improve our wellness. A perfect example is the watch. And they have essentially put a computer on your wrist. It's different than what Fitbit did. That was, a smartwatch, I would call it. This is different than really a full computer that you can download apps to. And it's pretty exciting for Apple to be the hardware piece and really allow app developers to enhance our wellness through using that platform. And I see that as just a massive growth opportunity for Apple in the next decade.
A lot of the story about Apple over the last few months has been sort of the push-pull between the company being more services-oriented or more hardware, more gadget-oriented. How do you see the company striking that balance as we head further into the second half?
Understandable that that's the topic. Is this a service company? Is it a hardware company? Most investors land that this, just given the percentage of revenue, is 80% is largely hardware-based, that this is a hardware company. The way that we view it is just taking this higher-level approach, and we think that investors will gravitate to a view that be less concerned about whether it's coming from services, whether it's Apple Music or Apple TV Plus, the App Store, or the hardware, the iPhone, the iPad, less about those segments, more about what is revenue growth and earnings growth. That is one of the kind of pieces that needs to be illuminated is this company just defines power and earnings, amount of cash that they can generate, $60 billion a year is, just makes other, even tech companies, pale in comparison. We believe that the question about hardware versus services and the multiple over time, it's going to take probably 2 or 3 years, but over time, that conversation will shift to this company just has a suite of products that work really well together, that enhance people's lives and ultimately power earnings and revenue growth.
Our thanks to Gene Munster, as well as Jim Paulson of Leuthold Whedon and Mark Vittner, senior economist at Wells Fargo Securities. And our thanks to you for joining us. Have a great and safe holiday weekend. And please join us Monday morning at 5 a.m. Wall Street time for Bloomberg Daybreak. I'm Nathan Hager. It's 57 minutes past the hour, and this is Bloomberg.
I'm Robin, one of the tech experts, here to help you at Curry's PC World. I'm not just a voice on the radio. You can now come into your local store and talk tech with a human being like me. Just the news you needed this morning. We've put all the right measures in place to help you again safely in your local Staples Corner store. The tech experts are back in town. So come in and see if that laptop can help you improve your home setup. And welcome back to your local Curry's PC World.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. Why not get road ready with a free car check worth £15 at all our stores and garages? With 25,000 weekly slots available at 700 locations, you can count on us to get you safely back on the road. Or even back beside the seaside. From MOTs to tyre fittings, there's no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
My name is Danya. I moved to Manchester in 2010. I came from Afghanistan. The first school day was a bit tough. I had no friends, couldn't speak English, and felt a bit left out. My high school teacher was very supportive. She matched me up with friends that spoke the same language as me. Having friends gave me a lot of confidence. I felt like I'm not being left out.
Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. Get free one-to-one support with our teacher training advisors to get one step closer to the classroom. Subject to eligibility. Search Get Into Teaching.
We're all guilty of spending too much time on social media. Why not add something genuinely useful to your feed with TuneIn? Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to learn about some of the best stuff happening around the app. You might just discover your next audio obsession.
Want to get all your college sports news in one place? Turn on the Yahoo Sports College podcast to hear experts Dan Wetzel, Pat Forty, and Pete Thamel break down the latest NCAA stories from the football field to the basketball court and beyond.
I think they should do a video of him running to Heritage Hall and front flipping in. Remember that famous front flip in the end zone that he did? Wasn't he the one who made that popular?
I think he was.
Ricky was, yeah.
Search Yahoo College Sports Podcast on TuneIn to listen.
On the Bloomberg Business app and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now a global news update. Celebrations dampened French government shakeup. I'm John Trout. Millions of Americans celebrate Independence Day this weekend, but the unwelcomed pandemic has put the nation in crisis mode.
Americans are advised to be extra cautious this 4th of July.
I hope we don't have a reprise of what happened on Memorial Day, with lots of people out there carefree rather than careful.
CDC advisor Dr. William Schaffner says if you socialize this weekend, wash your hands, maintain distance, and wear a mask.
I want everybody to have a good time. Carefully, prudently, please.
I'm John Lawrence.
A new French prime minister will be appointed to replace Edouard Philippe, who has resigned.
Amid an expected government reshuffle, French President Emmanuel Macron praises outgoing Prime Minister Edouard Philippe's outstanding work in the past 3 years. The reshuffle comes days after a green wave swept over France in local elections. Macron saw his young centrist party defeated in France's biggest cities. As the pandemic was peaking in the country in March and April, authorities came under fire for a lack of masks, tests, tests and medical equipment. Before that, Macron's pro-business policies, widely seen as favoring the wealthy, had been hampered by the yellow vest movement in France against perceived social injustice. Scott Carr, Washington.
A Turkish court is trying, in absentia, 2 former aides of Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and 18 other Saudi nationals over the 2018 killing of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. The trial in Turkey will be closely watched for possible new information or evidence into the killing, including the whereabouts of Khashoggi's remains. Markets advanced in Asia today following a Wall Street rally driven by strong jobs data. The Dow gained 0.4. U.S. markets are closed today in observance of Independence Day. I'm John Trout.
Picture this. A shortage of fuel has closed your electric utility, or any other possible disaster devastated your town. You're out of power, no lights, no news. That's why federal and state agencies urge you to have an emergency radio. Now you can get a free Dynamo World Band emergency radio. This powerful radio lets you stay informed during any type of emergency. It doesn't even need batteries. It comes with a hand-crank generator and super bright LED flashlight. The Dynamo emergency radio includes the NOAA weather band, a long-range AM receiver, a high-sensitivity FM band, and even a USB jack to charge cell phones or other devices. The Dynamo Emergency Weather Band radio retails for almost $30, but Newsmax wants to make sure you get this radio. So check out the free offer for the emergency radio by going to gettheradio.com. That's gettheradio.com, or call toll-free 877-NEWSMAX. That's 877-NEWSMAX. This radio could save your life. This offer may end soon, so order today.
For the first time, a Major League Baseball team has reached a deal with a sports gambling company. Correspondent Barbara Cusack fills us in.
The Detroit Tigers announced a multi-year partnership with PointsBet. CEO of PointsBet USA, Johnny Aitken, says it's the first legal sports betting operator in U.S. history to partner with a Major League Baseball franchise. As part of the deal, PointsBet will have branding at Comerica Park and will be featured on the Detroit Tigers radio network. Detroit said the agreement will enhance fan engagement and game day excitement. I'm Barbara Cusack.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott has ordered that face coverings must be worn in public across most of the state. The move, announced yesterday, is a dramatic ramp-up of the Republican governor's efforts to control spiking numbers of confirmed coronavirus cases and hospitalizations. I'm John Trout.
And I'm John Metaxas from the Bloomberg Newsroom. U.S. stock futures are mixed on this Friday, July 3rd, as U.S. stock and bond markets are closed for the official observance of Independence Day. Dow futures are down 43 points, S&P futures are down 4, but NASDAQ futures are up 10. Treasury futures are steady. European shares have dipped into negative territory. The Euro Stoxx 50 index down nearly 0.25% after Asian shares posted gains. The Hang Seng gained nearly 1%, the Nikkei up nearly 0.75%. The MSCI All Country World Index is headed for an advance of more than 3% on the week as positive jobs and manufacturing numbers in the U.S. are tempered by concern over the spread of coronavirus. Crude oil is trading lower today at just over $40 an ounce. Gold and silver are slightly lower. Gold just under $1,800 an ounce. Silver just above $18. Explorers extended the slump in U.S. oil rigs for a 16th straight week as the industry looks to lower costs by completing wells that have already been drilled. We get that story from Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
John, the number of active rigs in the U.S. fell by 3 to 185. That is the lowest since 2009, according to weekly numbers from Baker Hughes. As crude prices recover but remain well below their pre-pandemic peak earlier this year, producers are focusing on wells that are already drilled and waiting to be fracked. Worldwide lockdowns to prevent the spread of COVID-19 had a devastating impact on crude demand at a time when shale explorers are already struggling to generate enough free cash flow to meet their hefty debt loads. John?
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Metaxas. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Best.
Bloomberg Best is about the insight and the context that we get from our guests.
It's a great way to catch up on some of the stories you might have missed on the Bloomberg.
Stories you're not going to find in any other news organization.
Bloomberg Best. Bloomberg's best stories of the week. Powered by 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries around the world.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio, I'm Denise Pellegrini, and on this holiday edition of Bloomberg Best for Friday, July 3rd, 2020, we'll hear some of the most influential conversations from the Bloomberg Invest Global 2020 virtual conference. This hour, we hear from U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin discussing the ongoing economic impact of the coronavirus pandemic. Plus, John Rogers, Ariel Investments Chairman and co-CEO, discusses the impact of COVID-19 on minority communities. And Bridgewater Associates co-CIO Bob Prince tells Bloomberg the impact of the coronavirus pandemic could last 18 to 24 months. Steven Mnuchin is the 77th Secretary of the Treasury. He was instrumental in the implementation of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and leads the Treasury Department's regulatory reform efforts. Carlyle Group's David Rubenstein caught up with Mnuchin at the Leadership Live at the Bloomberg Invest Global 2020 virtual conference. Here, they discuss the likelihood of another stimulus package in the United States. Let's listen in.
It's something we're very seriously considering. The president has been clear that we put a lot of money into the economy. We had an unprecedented response on a bipartisan basis in the last CARES bill, and there's no question that money is having a major impact on the economy, whether it's the PPP, which impacted 50 million workers, or whether it's the direct payments of over 160 million or enhanced unemployment. These are all having an important part of protecting American workers and American business. We are beginning to discuss the different aspects of what another bill would look like. We want to take our time because, number one, there's a lot of money we still haven't put out. And number two, we want to make sure whatever we do going forward is much more targeted to the businesses that are most impacted.
The timing, you think that it's likely that sometime in July a bill might pass both houses?
I do. That would be the timing.
Okay, and the negotiations, there are some people who think that you are not tough enough on the Democrats, and therefore some Republicans are saying that you should have a partner, Mark Meadows or somebody else, to negotiate. But in your view, you'll be the principal person negotiating with the Congress on this legislation. Is that right?
Well, David, I mean, let me first be clear. What I'm doing at the direction of the president, and it's the president's policies. Last time, Mark had just come on board, and I asked Mark to come up with me. He was very critical in helping with the last bill, so we have a great teamwork, and he will be there with me. But let me just say, I'm very proud of the fact that the last two bills were 96-0 and 100-0. So this isn't a question of being tough enough or not being tough enough. We had unprecedented bipartisan support at a time when it was critical to get money into the economy and to help American workers.
The parts that are the various bills that have passed so far, which do you think has been the most effective so far? The PPP, the unemployment insurance, the other loan programs, which are you think is working the best so far?
Well, David, as you know, because you've lived through other financial times, this is a very, very different situation than we've ever seen before. This is the first time that we've shut down the entire U.S. economy because of a virus, and we had to have a different approach. And the reason I mean a different approach was it was very important to get money into the economy quickly. Things that took 4 or 5 or 6 months, even if they in the long term worked better, would not have been effective. So we needed to have a range of tools. And if you look at the CARES Act, there were different tools that we used to put massive amounts of money into the economy. Obviously, as I just mentioned before, you had the PPP, you had the direct payments, you had the unemployment. We also had a program for the airlines, which was very critical. We had $450 billion that we could work with the Federal Reserve on the 13.3 facilities, and this really worked perfect. The mere announcement of some of these facilities unlocked the markets. even without spending a penny of taxpayer dollars, it unlocked to the point where, we've had unprecedented corporate issuance. Companies like Boeing, which I thought were going to need to come to us in our national security program, borrowed $25 billion in the market without putting a penny of taxpayer money at risk.
So right now, would you say that the legislation that you've passed is working reasonably well? Or would you say the Fed has done as good a job as you would like them to do? They have a lending program, which I think has not yet actually lent money. And can you say whether the president is happy today or happier today with the head of the Federal Reserve?
Well, I think the Federal Reserve has done a phenomenal job. We speak to them almost on a daily basis. These programs are a combination of work of the Federal Reserve and the Treasury, and I think we've worked very well together. Every single one of these programs is now up and running. So we have a municipal bond program, we have a money market program, we have a commercial paper program, we have a Main Street program that's now up and running, we have a corporate primary and secondary. We had a program that lent to banks and non-banks for PPP loans. So the Fed acted in unprecedented response. And yes, I think you've seen the president is very pleased with what the Fed has been doing.
That's U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin with David Rubenstein. And coming up, more from Rubenstein's conversation with Steven Mnuchin discussing the U.S. recession sparked by the coronavirus pandemic. This is Bloomberg.
Next Thursday, you will be caught in an extreme flash flood.
Disasters don't plan ahead, but you can. Talk to your loved ones about making an emergency plan. Get started today at ready.gov/plan. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. This should be the biggest time of the year for an industry that's a 4th of July favorite. That's the sound of a Zambelli fireworks show in Pittsburgh a few years ago. A sound you won't hear as much this year because of COVID-19.
With the downturn and the fact that the majority of displays are canceling, it could affect the viability of the industry.
Zambelli Fireworks Chairman Dr. George Zambelli's company dates back to the 1890s and provides jobs to people who plan and run more than 2,000 displays annually.
We have full-time sales staff, project managers, choreographers, the traditional secretarial pool.
While it will be a tough year for Zambelli in the fireworks industry, he does see some signs of hope.
Some of the communities are starting to decide to have displays later on in the year. A number of them, Labor Day weekend.
I'm Ed Corey, Bloomberg Radio.
Debbie Hart is president of Buy.
Hey, I'm Robin, one of the tech experts, here to help you at Corey's PC World. I'm not just a voice on the radio. You can now come into your local store and talk tech with a human being like me. Just the news you needed this morning. We've put all the right measures in place to help you again safely in your local Staples Corner store. The tech experts are back in town. So come in and see if that laptop can help you improve your home setup. And welcome back to your local Curry's PC World.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great?
So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Friday morning by the scruff of the neck. Ignore this gloomy weather and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
London. Toolstation are here to help get your job safely started and finished, with over 60 branches within the M25. All open with social distancing and contactless click and collect from 5 minutes. And with 20,000 top trade quality products to choose from. Order online now for collection in London branches and get £5 off when you spend over £30 with the code LON530. So, get your job started at toolstation.com. Terms and conditions apply.
How do we control coronavirus now? Here's Michael, a delivery driver.
All day, every day, I'm seeing people. Last thing I want to do is give anyone coronavirus. So the first sign of a cough, soon as my temperature rises, any loss of taste or smell, I'm staying in, booking a test, only going out to get it done. I mean, you want to know straight away, right? That's how we protect each other.
To get a test, go to nhs.uk/coronavirus or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Bloomberg Best on Bloomberg Radio.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio, this is Bloomberg Best. Let's continue the conversation between Carlyle Group co-founder David Rubenstein and U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin. Here, they discuss the timetable for the recession. Mnuchin says the U.S. will emerge from the downturn by the end of the year.
The traditional economic metrics aren't really appropriate given we shut down the economy. So first, let me say, there were way too many people that lost their jobs and got laid off. And again, we're not going to be done until we get every single one of those people back to work. So I'm not really focused on the technical issue of it is a recession or it's not a recession. I'm focused on helping all these small businesses and all the workers. And that's what our job. And I think you saw the recent employment numbers. People thought there'd be another 8 million people unemployed. We put 2.5 million people back to work. Clearly, this is the PPP working. And you saw great retail sales. I think you're going to see the economy had a very bad second quarter. I think you're going to see a spectacular rebound off the bottom in the third quarter.
Some people who have been gotten the PPP loans are very happy with them, but they say it's unclear whether they have to repay them or not. Will the SBA clarify who actually has to repay or not repay those loans?
Well, the good news is, again, I think we struck the right balance here. And for all loans that are less than $2 million, we created a safe harbor around the certification unless there's things like fraud. And for loans over $2 million, they're going to go through an electronic review to make sure that the companies needed the money in the certification. And I think that'll be a very fair process as we go through that.
If you owe taxes on April the 15th, you could file on July the 15th. Is there any consideration, as some people have speculated, that it might be postponed once again to maybe September 15th?
Well, David, it's something I'm thinking about. As of now, we're not intending on doing that, but it is something we may consider. I am pleased to report that I think it was absolutely the right thing to do at the time, because we were absolutely worried about people couldn't get to their accountants, couldn't get their information. And I'm pleased to report that returns filed are down only 10% year over year, and refunds are down only 10%. So the majority of Americans have filed. The majority of those people that needed to get refunds got them. I'd encourage all Americans, if you can file your tax returns, go ahead and do it, particularly if you think you have a refund. And we'll look carefully as we approach this July date.
Okay. Now, you talked about shutting down the economy, which obviously we had to do and was done. But you've also said recently that we can't do it again because we just can't afford to do it. So are you worried that new COVID cases are breaking out in states like Florida or Texas, And how will you deal with that in terms of opening up the economy again, but also protecting the safety of people?
Well, David, I think the president made the absolute right decision. It was a very difficult decision in shutting down the entire economy. The issues that we were concerned about at the time were hospitals were getting way overcrowded. We had issues of ventilators, and we had issues of not having enough medicines. I think, we had an unprecedented effort, especially in places like New York, where we built out extra hospital beds in the convention center. We sent the Navy ship there to be ready as a hospital. And the good news is those never needed to be used. Right now, we're in a different situation. Right now, we have plenty of capacity. We got plenty of ventilators. We've made great progress on viral treatments. And we've made great progress on testing. So I think this is going to be an issue that we have to look at on a local by local basis. Where there are breakouts, there'll be contract tracing. And I think we're just in a completely different situation. So I think it would be highly unlikely we get to a point where we need to shut the economy down again.
Okay, you were one of the principal negotiators with Bob Lighthizer of the deal with China. Are you confident that the Chinese can honor the commitments to buy the products from the United States that they agreed to?
I have every expectation that they will. They have continued to tell us that they will, as recently as last week when Secretary Pompeo met with one of the senior people that flew in from China, and they had a summit. So I have that expectation that they will lead up to their obligation. Now, having said that, let me just comment on, I think the world wants a lot more transparency on COVID. How did it start? How did it spread? How did it spread around the world? And it didn't spread within China. So we shouldn't confuse these two issues. Yes, we have expectations that they will live up to their trade agreements, but we also have expectations they need a lot more transparency around the disease.
There is not more transparency. Do you think there will be a decoupling with the Chinese economy and the U.S. economy? I think you have talked about that recently, but you see that as being separate than the trade agreement. But are you worried about it, or do you think it could be appropriate to have a decoupling at some point?
Well, I don't want to speculate, David. It could. I think you have a lot of companies that are beginning to look at their supply chains and making sure they diversify them. And I think that's something that's prudent to do wherever they are around the world. You have a lot of companies that are looking at bringing jobs back to the U.S. because of our tax incentives in other areas. As we have said all along, if we can compete with China on a fair and level playing field, it is a great opportunity for U.S. businesses and U.S. workers, as China has a large growing middle class, several 100 million people. But if we can't participate and compete on a fair basis, then you are going to see a decoupling going forward.
So the Chinese government is thinking about changing the ways in which it operates and oversees Hong Kong. The president has been concerned about that, so has Secretary Pompeo. If the Chinese government were to go forward with legislation it's considering, do you think the U.S. government might impose some type of sanctions to show its disapproval of what's going on?
Well, David, it's our policy. We don't comment on future sanctions, but what I will comment on is the president, and this was a few weeks ago at his Rose Garden